The following podcast is brought to you by CDKOffers.com. Use offer code DIESHRINK for 3% off everything on the website and Broken Silicon for 25% off all Windows codes. All right, on with the show. And welcome to Broken Silicon, a computer gaming podcast. I am your host, Tom, and I will let my guest introduce himself.
What's going on, guys? The name is Innocence, but Tom is going to be calling me JR today because that's actually my real name. And I host a gaming channel that you'll probably be able to find somewhere in the description. And I just talk about games, tech, and pretty much a bunch of different things from New Jersey on the East Coast. And yeah, pretty much that's it.
So is it Innocence 2? Because for a while I was like, is it Innocenceii, like a play on a sensei and Innocence? Or I thought I saw that in like the border of your channel, Innocence 2.
Yeah, so funny story behind that actually is originally I just wanted Innocence, but you know, when I first made like my online alias, Innocence was obviously taken. It's a pretty common name. So I decided to go, you know, with Innocence the first, so _1, but that was taken too. So I went Innocence _2. That wasn't taken. So that's pretty much where it comes from. It's technically Innocence the second, but I just go by Innocence. Yeah.
You know, people have told me my YouTube name is too long, but I was blown away. The name Moore's Law is Dead wasn't taken, nor was the website name. When I grabbed it, because I think it's such a common phrase amongst me and my friends. Actually, my original name was Moore's Law Has Been Dead. That one was definitely way too long. But so yeah, I understand the struggle for finding the name. And yeah, I mean, welcome to Broken Silicon, the 18th top technology podcast in Saudi Arabia, apparently. For those wondering why I just said that, I can like follow like, you know, as Broken Silicon gets bigger and bigger. And I think what I'm going to start doing at the start of every episode is just announcing the highest rank I can find. I think at one point we were number 9 in Trinidad and Tobago, it said. So I don't know. I think that's kind of funny to see like number 8 in Ukraine or something. So shout out to all of my listeners in Saudi Arabia, apparently. I guess let's get into it. What made you want to start your channel?
So I've been a big gamer my entire life. So originally I was supposed to become, you know, if you guys don't know, I'm mainly a PC player, but originally, you know, as a kid, I always wanted a console, you know, so I always wanted to get one of those, but I couldn't because, you know, whatever reason there may be. So I ended up just saving up like $250, which wasn't enough to buy a console, and just getting this rundown laptop that could barely run anything. I'm sure we've all been through those days, you know?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, so I ended up getting that, and that kind of turned me into a PC gamer, got really big into Call of Duty and all different types of games and stuff like that. So I just been gaming for a long time. And then eventually, since I built my PC, I got into PC tech and never looked back. I do own consoles, but don't use them as much as my PC. Still have a place in my heart for them, but you know, PC.
Yeah, I mean, I guess when it comes to my gaming, I've probably said this on other episodes. It was mostly PC at first, of course, because that's what was there. And then eventually, I think in Nintendo 64 was the first one. And there were tons of consoles after that. And then once I went into college for engineering is when I got the, you know, go ahead for some funding to build a decent PC, not just for gaming, but for like CAD and stuff like that. And that's when I really got into the whole hardware aspect of it. I think you mentioned on your channel, are you in college or what's your background like professionally?
Yeah, so currently I'm enrolled in college. I just started my 3rd year and I am a computer engineering major. I do plan on going for a master's at least if the future allows me to. But yeah, I'm a computer engineering major, fall semester currently right now.
Yeah, and of course, I'm, as I've said before, mechanical engineering, which I don't know if you've noticed that or whatever college you go to, but at mine, it seemed like all electrical engineers and a lot of computer engineers got into like cars or guns or something. And then all the mechanical engineers for their hobby would be computer stuff, just because it's not what they're doing at work, but they still get to build things. So, yeah, I guess let me ask you this. I've watched some videos from your channel, and it's very clear you mostly game on PC like me. You appreciate consoles like me. And then also you just like talking about the hardware and the market forces behind both of them. And I find that it's somewhat rare. It seems like so many PC gaming websites, the writers have no clue what's in the console for how much they analyze graphics cards. And then when it comes to the console focused websites, they have no clue what's in anything. Like they have no clue what any of the hardware means. It's usually actually exceedingly cringeworthy.
Yeah.
And but I don't notice that, like on YouTube, I found more and more people like me or you. Why do you think that's so rare to like the hardware and games behind both? I don't know why it should matter.
Honestly, it's a tough question to answer. I think personally, it probably has to do with, people who are into PC and, if you're into PC, you're probably somewhat interested in eventually building your own computer or getting into the parts or stuff like that. Not many PC players buy pre-builts and don't at least have a little
not
bit
the ones on websites,
yeah,
right?
Not the ones on websites, at least. Yeah, at least on the internet. So I feel like the people who are on forums and are doing, whatever they got to do, they're typically interested in the hardware side of things. But then when it comes to console gaming, like most people who are into console gaming and even the people who are writing these articles, it seems, just like the simplicity of it all. They don't really want to get into the nitty gritty and like figuring out why things work. Like all my friends, like it's not very common to find, people who like the hardware, like, myself or you. So like even my friends in real life, they don't really care about why their console works. They just care that it works. So I think that's probably the main reason that the demographics are just so different.
Yeah. When I think about it though, and I think a lot of PC gamers, at least in the past 5 years, I think there has been this boom of like pre-built gaming PCs. Especially with how long the past couple generations of consoles have dragged on. But one thing that I find particularly odd, because like you kind of got into it, you would expect, right, anyone writing about PC hardware gets more and more into the hardware and less into the games. That's why they have a website talking about the hardware, because they're more interested in that stuff, or at least writing about that stuff, I guess you would say. It makes sense to me why people on a console website don't care what's in the specs, but it surprises me how, should I say, confident and yet ignorant I see some comments about the specs in consoles from PC websites. You know what I mean? Like, for how much time some people put into analyzing two graphics cards against each other, the misquoting of specs inside like a PS4 or an Xbox One X or something, it's rampant. Like there are people that, these are the people that will get, a low-end graphics card for their desktop and then say it's better than the APU in a PlayStation. And it's like, that APU is not the same one as in your laptop, guys.
Yeah, for sure. But wait, do you have like any, like, I'm kind of having a hard time picturing it. Like, do you have any like any crazy examples?
Actually, I do. This was a while ago. I'm talking about the HD 7000 series, 7970, 7870, those graphics cards. And I remember this build article done on Tom's Hardware where they built this, what would you call it? A living room gaming PC, which is really just a smaller gaming PC. And it's really the distinction is just you plugged it into a TV instead of a monitor. But they put this low profile 7750, which I think I actually remember had like 512 stream processors, right? So I guess that, yeah. So, and then they said, well, it games, like DMC, that version of Devil May Cry was their example, and 900p well. And I saw just an army of comments, and this was, back in like 2013, I want to say, of people going, and it's way better than whatever's going to be in those consoles, despite the fact that the PS4 has like over double the shaders and double the bandwidth compared to the PC they built. But there's just this assumption that because it's a desktop, it's stronger than all consoles.
Yeah, I think what a lot of people tend to forget is just that, especially a console on release, they're just unmatched in terms of like delivering a certain amount of power for how much you're paying. Like it's kind of insane. At least to me, it's kind of insane. Like, you know, when the PS4 and Xbox One first came out, like you really couldn't. I think that was around the time when the 900 series of Nvidia was launching, or launched just a little bit before then.
It launched, the 900. The Maxwell came a year after.
A year after, okay. So I feel like even with those cards and what was in those cards, or even the generation prior, like you couldn't build a PC for $400 and expect to get the same results. And I think a lot of people just seem to forget that, and especially when they assume that and they see that these prices are, you know, for the cards that they're putting in the desktops that they're building, they see that they're more expensive, and they're like, okay, so because it's more expensive, it has to be better, even though that's not necessarily the case. Like, you know, you on a $400 PS4, you're getting, you know, X amount of performance, and then you're paying $400 for just your graphics card, and are able to match, maybe perform a little bit less than that. And it's just like, people are like, oh no, I paid more for it, so it doesn't matter. You know what I'm saying? Like, it has to be better, when that's not necessarily the case. So I think that's probably a misconception or bias that a lot of people tend to have.
Yeah, I've got a lot of friends, and again, I think a lot of people got into PC gaming between 2012 and 2015. That was when you had the PlayStation 3 and the 360 generation dragging on for so long that it got to the point that you could, by then, right? Like, that does happen near the end of a console gen. You could build a gaming PC that crushed the consoles. Maybe it would be twice as expensive, but it was 4 times better or something, right? But those consoles were like, you know, what, 7 years old, 8 years old? So like big deal. Good job. Yeah. They were designed on 65 or 90 nanometer. Like, wow, cool. A 28 nanometer thing can beat that. But, you know, and so I think a lot of people built PCs because those generations dragged on for too long, which I get it. You know, I mean, God, if you plugged in a PS3 lately, that thing is so sluggish. Like, it's ridiculous. It's painful. And then I think people also like, I mean, I'm just going to start saying it. You know, I think people bought Wii's, wanted something stronger, built a PC. The Wii U didn't pan out. And at the same time, the Xbox alienated a lot of their fan base at the start of this generation that were barely still in. Wait. And so instead of buying a PlayStation, I really think a lot of people just built gaming PCs in 2014. And so I think there's this assumption then, right, from a lot of people that have been PC gaming now for 5 years that, oh, because it's cheaper, it's weaker. But I have a friend recently, and this is why I just did this whole long, you know, what I'm getting to is I have a friend who's like, you know, I've never actually been PC gaming for years, understood what I was talking about, and then watched new graphics cards come out next to a new console. And he's like, it's true. At the start of a gen, you're just not going to match, you know, you're not going to match the price performance. So many people kept calling me stupid in the comments for saying these consoles will not cost more than $500. They will not. I'm telling you, they're not going to. And now, as of this recording, we now know the Xbox price. Like, I mean, I just don't know. I don't know. And it all stems from this. I think people just don't understand the insane markups on PC gaming prices in the do-it-yourself market.
Yeah, you know, I'm not too familiar like with the exact percentages you might be, but yeah, I could totally tell that, you know, things do definitely get marked up. I mean, just look at Nvidia recently. I mean, the 3090, I feel like, yeah, I haven't, you know, I haven't been following the market too much, but anything that's, you know, $1,499, I think is the MSRP for the Founders Edition. Yeah, is just, wow. I didn't think it was going to get any worse than the 2080 Ti, but I was so wrong.
Well, you know, someone asked me in the Discord, in my Patreon Discord, right? One of the patrons in there asked me a question like, someone on Reddit said that it has $1,000 worth of RAM and that's why it's so expensive. And I'm like, no, that 24 gigabytes is like $200 worth of RAM. I know that cheap GDR6 is about $5, expensive is about 10 to 12, and they're using GDR6X. So I think at most it's 15 to 20 bucks a gigabyte. But I know HBM is like $25 a gigabyte at most. So there's no way GDR6X costs as much as HBM, right? Yeah, so I think it's about $15 a gigabyte for GDR6X. And so, you know, 15 times 24, guys. So what are we, you know? So it's not, Man, it's not that much. They're spending like, a few $100 on RAM or something, and then they're putting it on a piece of silicon that is at most 200, probably a lot less, and then the PCB maybe $50. And even if the cooler was $100, I mean, the 3090's got a 100% markup, people, 100%. Which is absurd, like when the consoles are sold for, and a lot of smartphones, and it's not just that, TVs are often sold at losses too.
Yeah, it's funny that you bring up the consoles because, when they announced, I read a rumor a while back that the Xbox Series X SoC, I'm not sure how true it is, like costs, like the SoC alone was like a very big portion. I think it was like something like $350. I don't know how accurate that is. That sounds high. I didn't look into it, but I think... Yeah, was it... Did you hear anything like that, or...
Say it again. What did you say the price of what was?
The Xbox SoC. I heard that it was like around $350 to make. Or was it something like that?
If that... I don't know. I would need the exact quote, because what they could be talking about is the SoC on the PCB with all of the I/O and all of the stuff on top of that. That could be correct when you don't account for the RAM. But even adding the RAM, right? So I just said, right? Like the RAM in the Xbox isn't that fast. It's pretty slow, actually, for GDR6 standards at this point. So it's probably about $6 a gigabyte, So maybe for all of that, yes. And then throw on top the chassis, the power supply, and of course the SSD. And you can see why they can sell it for $500.
Interesting. So wait, the price wasn't the price it was announced at $499 or $599. I thought I read $599.
$499 for the Xbox Series X. Technically, they haven't confirmed that, but so we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. But what was The Verge, right, had an article I sent you that leaked the Xbox Series S is 300 and the Xbox is 500. Xbox Series X is 500. Okay. Xbox just confirmed the price of the Series S. Technically, they haven't confirmed the Series X, but considering everything in that set of leaked info has been correct so far, I would assume it's safe to say it's $500 for the Series X.
Okay, which is actually right around where I think everybody expected it to be honest. But I was honestly...
where I did, yeah.
Yeah. Me personally, I wouldn't be surprised to have seen, $549 or maybe $599, but I'm happy to see that it's actually... $499, because I think that puts it right in the realm of everyone. We were expecting it to be higher than last generation, so I think that's like
well, there's inflation, right?
Yeah,
inflation. If you adjust for inflation and the fact that this is a bit stronger than last gen for the time, although honestly, again, you got to compare it to the PS4. The Xbox One had a lot of its money diverted into like an expensive camera. Yeah. If they would have taken that money and put it towards GDR5, it would have panned out much better, but they didn't. And so they had this massive bandwidth deficit, and then they wasted die space that could have gone towards more shaders, towards making up for the bandwidth deficit, because ESRAM or EDRAM takes up take up a ton of die space. Like you're trading die space instead of putting cores for graphics on there. You're wasting that on putting RAM on die, which is low latency and fast, but I mean, you can only put so much in a small space. So, yeah, I mean, okay, so we're kind of getting into it here. Let's go into one of the first reader mails.
Okay.
Andy Gangeo writes in, and he says, it feels like the console war is a specs war rather than which console is the most fun and innovative. Where are the days when Nintendo was delivering Wii, making games more dynamic and engaging? Can we expect something new from Sony and Microsoft to replace Kinect and Move? So I think there's two questions there, actually. I think let's answer the first one. Do you think console wars are really about the specs?
No, I wouldn't agree. I think, pre-launch, what else do you have to go off of, So I think, before these things actually come out,
good point.
We actually start seeing the games, you can't really talk about anything else, So I feel like that's why, in the early days of the PS5 and Xbox Series X news, before Sony had unveiled anything, people were like, yeah, Sony's definitely lost. They don't have as much power as the Xbox. And everyone, I was just sitting in my chair like, we don't know anything about these consoles. Like, sure, they're losing in specs, but I think what really matters at the end of the day, and I'm sure everyone has heard this quote, games sell consoles. So I think the games are more important, but, there's guys like us who just like the tech, so we talk about it, and that's what interests us. So I feel like the console war itself isn't about specs, but it's fun to talk about, and that's all we have until these things actually drop. So that's my opinion.
Well, yeah, and I think what people forget is that Reddit is not real life or even close to most people.
That's a good one,
right? Like you can look up the statistics. I found a website that shows you the statistics of each subreddit, and I found, like, for instance, r/hardware has like less comments a day than I get views an hour on my YouTube channel. Like, these Reddits are pretty niche, guys. Reddit itself is huge, but these subreddits where people are arguing for hours on end, it's really about 100 people arguing, and then you have 1,000 people that check in and like some of them every day. Like, that's really what the statistics suggest. And most people don't care about these specs. And I've actually seen this from a lot of tech tubers and, computer journalists too, like specs win console wars. And I'm like, I think that's literally never been true once. Like the Wii sold more, the PS2 sold more. Like, guys, like, I think literally to a generation, specs have literally never won. So how that you get this perception is just bonkers to me. And I think it's just people learning the wrong lessons. And also, a lot of people talk a lot about the specs online. That's not most people. And so, no, I think it's the whole package that wins, is the simple answer. And part of that package is the games, and specs are just a small part of that package. They just have to enable the experience people want. And it sounds like I'm a marketing person right now, but it's it's the experience, guys. Like, it is. That is when experience isn't just a buzzword. And we'll get into it later, but the specs are not as simple. And I think people are finding that now as just one big number. But anyways, I do want to answer one other thing he said, though, which is about Connect and Move. And I mean, the PlayStation 5 is going to support Move still. Those old PlayStation Move controllers. It's going to support the existing PSVR, and PSVR 2 will use Move. I guess let's talk about that just briefly, though. I don't know about the idea of like another Wiimote or Move on its own. I think Move is going to live on for a very long time in VR, but I don't know about. Do you think anything like just a camera and motion controls is ever coming back anytime soon? I guess. I mean, the people never say never.
Yeah, never. But like, I think the people who would have to do it would be Nintendo, because I don't think Microsoft or Sony are like trending in that direction. Like, we're talking like the old school Wii camera, right? With like the controls like that. Yeah. I think we're past that personally, but maybe I don't see Microsoft or Sony doing it. But that's not to say it wouldn't be successful. It's very possible that it could be, but I don't see it personally. That's me.
Well, and Microsoft's openly said they're not even going to focus on VR at all with their console. So I'd say right now, I mean, I think you're always going to see small motion control add-ons to pretty much every Nintendo console, it seems, moving forward. But Sony is probably just going to focus on VR. And I think they would be best to just focus on that, by the way, when it comes to all of these, you might call them gimmicks. So Sayonara writes in and says, an extreme simplification of the 9th generation. Do games sell systems better than systems sell games?
Oh, we kind of...
we answered that already. You would say a resounding yes, though, right?
Yeah, I would say I'd say 70% experience, 30% hardware, if I had to split it up, even though that's just a rough take. That's what I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, the hardware matters, but it's on a need-by-need basis, right? Like, what is that hardware enabling that makes it matter? It's never just the big number in itself. That's true for every device, not just consoles, by the way. But so I have some notes here, and I think we're starting to get into this. I wanted to establish a baseline before we get really deep into the main subjects of discussion, which is Sony and Microsoft's strategy this generation, is what we really want to get to. But I want to touch on some older. I picked a few random consoles that I suspected we might have a lot to say about. And I put the Dreamcast first. Now, you messaged me ahead of time and said you'd have almost nothing to say about the Dreamcast in reality. But I put this here because this is one that I think there's a lot of hot takes I can give. I mean, what would you say? And let me frame it this way. A lot of people say the Dreamcast was ahead of its time. A lot of people say the Dreamcast wasn't given a chance and it was one of the best consoles, despite, I think, selling about 11 million or something. Like, what is your mindset on these types of comments about the Dreamcast being great, ahead of its time, all of that?
Like you mentioned, I don't know too much about the Dreamcast, but depending on, I would need to see like, or hear some sort of expedition or anecdote as to why people feel the way that they do about the console. But, if it really was ahead of its time is in and of itself is a funny phrase. Not many, I think people kind of overuse it sometimes. Like, what exactly does that mean? Does that mean if we were to reintroduce it today, it would do better? Or you know what I mean? Or if people had the certain mindset that they do now back then, it would have done better? Like, because there's so many different ways you can interpret it. Like, okay, so if we were to relaunch it today, would it have done as well? And let's say, graphics aren't a big thing. Let's say, like, proportionally speaking to the specs and stuff like that, or at least the concept of it, would it have done better? Okay, you could ask that, or you can say with people with the mindsets that they have today, or knowing a little bit or vaguely a little bit of what they know now, and we all went back in time, you're asking would it have done better? I feel like people tend to look back on these things with rose-tinted goggles to their own experiences. So these are questions I don't think you could ever answer. Like, so maybe looking back, you had a great experience with it. To you, it was great, but those experiences are all subjective. And, objectively, we can only look at what actually happened. So that's why I don't like the phrase, but No,
that's very fair. I wish more people would have the, have the character to just openly reject phrases if they don't even agree with the concept, I think a lot of times we let ourselves get forced into discussions where you just might want to take a step back and flip over the table and say, I reject the premise. I'm not afraid of people saying they reject the premise because that can be an interesting discussion as well. But to answer the people who like Dreamcast, which seems like everyone who played it, loved it. Like, what I would say about the Dreamcast is, and especially with regards to ahead of its time, I remember this distinctly, the movie Steve Jobs, not the movie Jobs with Ashton Kutcher, the good one, that got good reviews, the one that didn't whitewash him and actually portrayed him as kind of an asshole. There was this scene near the end of the movie. A lot of people say the Apple Newton was the precursor to the iPhone. It was ahead of its time, right? But there's this scene where the guy who was the head of Apple before Steve Jobs took over the company again, it was, like a Palm Pilot device with a little stylus pen, right? And Steve Jobs says, there's one major problem with the Newton, and that's that you don't need a stylus when you have 5 attached to your hand. And and it's such a brilliant statement. And you go, oh, the Newton was ahead of its time. Was it? Or did it just have a major flaw? Right? Like, that's what I would say, is I think a lot of times we say ahead of its time when you have to realize any device that's successful is getting everything it needs to get right, actually right. You see, that was the problem, as we'll get to with some of the other consoles I want to talk about, is if you don't nail what you actually have to get right, you can have a bunch of good ideas, but if they're not the important ideas,
Yeah.
I did. And when it comes to the Dreamcast, then what can I say? It came out first. It ran a bunch of great games. It didn't have 2 analog sticks, though. That's a little odd, in my opinion, for launching after the PS1 or had already updated that. It had online, but it wasn't broadband. It had, the dial-up. And it was way more powerful than the PS1, of course. But the PS2 was stronger and had a DVD player. And the GameCube and Xbox were way stronger. Of course, they came out way later, so I don't know if that's a big thing to point out. But what I would say is that, the problem with the Dreamcast is it didn't quite do everything you would have expected in next gen. I'd say it did 90% of it, but that extra 10% mattered when it came from a big company with a DVD player. And you can say it was, cut short, and then I would say you're right. See, that's the problem, is I think the Dreamcast actually sold well, but Sega ran out of money. And so it's like, it's Sega's fault. They launched something they couldn't support. They basically needed it to sell as well as the Wii for it to ever keep being manufactured, and it didn't. So, I mean, that's what I would say about that. But you did say you had a lot more to say about other consoles. So let's get into the PlayStation 3, which this one, I believe there is so many misconceptions about what made it successful, what hurt it. It's one of those consoles I feel like people learned the wrong lessons, or some people have. I mean, I don't know what would, I don't know even where to start, but I guess let's frame it up this way. It launched a year after the 360. With the 360 had its own problems, like Red Ring of Death and the disc scratching problem and all of that.
Yeah.
But the PS3 was $100 more launching a year later with questionably better specs. I mean, it was better. Honestly, I would argue almost the biggest thing it had was that it actually had an HDMI port in the beginning. Like that was actually probably the biggest thing for like in making the games look better, to be honest. But you know, the way it was organized just wasn't that efficient. And I don't know, like what would you say about like the failures? Because again, it didn't do bad at the end of the day, but like at least the initial failure, we should say, of the PS3.
Okay, so the PS3, like you said, I think there are some big misconceptions about it. I feel like whenever it gets brought up in debates, a lot of people think that the 360 just, you know, absolutely destroyed the PS3 that generation in terms of sales or whatever. But you know, like you said, that's actually not the case. Like towards the end, PS3 actually started to catch up and started selling a bit more. But in terms of like the actual like, you know, architecture, like the cell processor and stuff like that, Sony tried to, I think it was, what was it, ARM based, right? If I remember correctly.
IBM.
Okay, so like the cell processor. So like it's, you know, it's hard. Like a lot of people have said, and it's true that it's harder to develop things for something that's a bit foreign. So like when it was first introduced, developers are having trouble with it, and because of that, it didn't do as well. Frame rates were a big issue and things like that. So I feel like a lot of that kind of stuck in people's heads. And not to mention, let's not forget the famous hack that happened of like Sony back in 2012, I want to say. Do you remember?
I remember. It was right after SOCOM came out and it killed that game.
Yeah, like it like
an online game and
destroyed
3 days. I believe it was less than a week after it came out. An online focused game. There was a month of no online. You could argue it killed the company. It killed Zipper.
Oh man.
Because Zipper went out of business after that.
Rest
so
in peace.
Yeah.
Oh man, but like even that, I feel like that was a big thing. Like the whole console was pretty much down for like 3 months. That was a big issue. That kind of like painted a negative light on the entire console in and of itself. And like, you know, it was already had this whole negative stigma that it wasn't performing as well as the Xbox. Even though it was, and because of that, people started getting having the misconception that the Xbox was more powerful and stuff like that, even though it wasn't. I feel like towards the end, a lot of these issues started to get worked out. Like when you look at like exclusives that came out towards the end of the generation, like the original Last of Us, which looked great for its time, looks like trash now, but it looked really good for its time. People were really happy with that.
It looked really good for its time. You couldn't even believe it was on a PS3. Although it did have like 1 minute load times or more, if I remember right. It was an old, then again, it didn't install the game. So they're just loading from the disc every level. But
yeah, exactly. But yeah, so I feel like Sony tried to fix a problem that didn't need to be fixed. Like they tried to fix something that wasn't fixed when they introduced like the cell processor and like moving away from,
what they had in the PS2 was just even more foreign, to be honest.
Was it?
It was like this crazy proprietary emotion engine chip that, like it basically didn't have a graphics card, the PS2. Like it was, the processor was so powerful that they just expected you to do everything with that. It was really weird. Basically just had a video output component bolted onto a CPU.
So that's very interesting.
And in fact, the PS3 almost didn't have a graphics card. And they actually wanted to launch it in 2004 or 2005. But then the cell got delayed like 2 years. And by then, well, now it's not that strong if it doesn't have a graphics card. So they bolted on this high-end or cut-down version of a high-end Nvidia graphics card at the last minute. The cell processor was designed for all types of different stuff. I think, they shoehorned in a CPU that they were using for other stuff, similar to Blu-ray. Problem is Blu-ray player is useful, and having an overly powerful CPU that costs hundreds of dollars is maybe, I think, one of the bigger mistakes Sony's ever made. To be honest,
yeah, for sure,
is shoehorning that in because it's still holding back backwards compatibility, like the fact that they put that in there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I guess so. I guess what I want to say is this about the PS3 too. I think they still could have made it work much better. I think it was just one of the most blundering launches I've ever seen. Like they launched this $600 console that has an overpowered CPU that's hard to program and a powerful graphics card. But then they kneecap it by giving it segmented RAM. I think it had I honestly don't remember anymore. Like I think it had 0.5 GB of RAM and it was segmented. And then they also, do you remember the launch? PS3s had like 10 SD card slots for like all different types of cameras built into it and like 4 USB ports. And it's like, I get the feeling that if they would have just not segmented the memory, removed all of those SD card slots, cut down how many USB ports there were, and given it a 40 gigabyte hard drive, they could have maybe sold it for like $450 and it would have been the same thing, honestly.
No,
like,
yeah,
and it's,
you
know, and but I think people learned the wrong lesson. They say the PS3 was different, so it was hard to program for. No, those are two different things. Sometimes things can be built differently than how your gaming PC is, and it makes it easier to program for, right? And I think different doesn't mean bad. They just happen to have different and bad at the same time, which was not good.
Yeah, exactly. Like you said, putting such a powerful general purpose processor into that, and then putting a Blu-ray.
Well, the opposite of general purpose, right? Like a medical imaging.
Yeah, that's kind of
like NSA processor. Like, I don't even understand.
Yeah, that's really what I meant in my mind. Like, not general purpose, but like, pretty much besides gaming. Like, and I was thinking anything besides gaming. So they did that, put the Blu-ray player in there, and then you get $599. $599, not a good number for that.
No,
for the time.
And remember, adjust for inflation, right? That was like $700. And the thing that blows people away when I tell them this is, I believe that actually cost $800 to make. They almost bankrupted themselves selling that thing for $600.
Yeah, it was. I'm pretty sure it's. I mean, obviously, I can't remember if it's been confirmed or if like this is just like some person who claims to have worked at Sony or whatever. But I'm sure I've read multiple times on multiple accounts that they actually did sell the console at a deficit, like
a massive one.
Yeah, they did sell the PS3 at a deficit, especially in the beginning.
So I guess let's lead in then to the Xbox One, right? Because this is where I worry also again that people are learning the wrong lessons. I think, especially as we've talked about on the internet, that people think the Xbox One sold worse because it was weaker and cost more when it was just the cost more, guys.
Oh, for sure. Oh, yeah.
Like, it wasn't the weaker, really. Like, the weaker was just like another nail, right, in the coffin. It was like, and they didn't have the same games. Like, and to be fair, like the PS4 did not have the same launch line. Well, okay, it has probably a better launch lineup actually than the PS3. I guess Resistance was a good game or something. Yeah. But I mean, like the PS4's roster of games, I think the PS3 was way better, frankly, overall, at least for the time. But the PS4 still had more games than the Xbox One had, and it cost less. And they nailed the messaging. That's it. I think people focus on the teraflops and they're like, guys, that's not what won. Like teraflops did not make the Wii win.
Exactly. I feel like, as we're going back to the Xbox One versus PS4, there's I guess so many comments of people saying, fun fact, I don't know if you guys know, but I get claimed of being a Sony fanboy, like 24/7, 100%. Oh, you're a Sony fanboy. I don't even like the concept of fanboying. I mean, honestly, I'm the type of dude that if it's performing better, I'm just gonna give you my opinion on it. If you don't like it, I'm not gonna say don't watch because that's rude. But I'm just like,
eventually you have to make your peace with it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And just go.
Like, I don't know what else to tell you. Like, I'm not fanboying, and that's not to say that Xbox doesn't do great things. They obviously do great things. This console looks amazing. Can't wait to pick it up. I think it was Was it confirmed the release date for November 10th? Right?
I think so. Yeah, it sounds right.
I'm gonna be there. So you're gonna see me online. I'm gonna get the thing. So I feel like, but my point is, I get accused of being a Sony fanboy, and people a thing that people say a lot in my comments is that, oh, so Sony fanboys were saying that the PlayStation 4 had more teraflops back in 2013, but now they're saying teraflops don't matter. I don't know if you were in 2013, but I don't even think people cared about teraflops back then. At least me, I wasn't.
It's been talked about more this time around, actually. I think you're right. Exactly. Yeah, I mean, some people did, but...
Yeah, it wasn't, like, when I was, like, looking at console news, it wasn't nearly talked about as much. So I feel like I wasn't talking about it. But that's a big comment that I get. Yeah, teraflops, people weren't talking about it. Now people are talking about it. It's a little bit of a tangent, but that's a funny thing.
No, but and I just thought of something too. does it annoy you extra then though when you see somebody go, I'm a PlayStation fanboy and I like your coverage? Like, because that pisses me off even harder is when people are like, I'm a PlayStation fanboy and that's good. And I'm like, dude, fuck off. I don't want any fanboys. I don't want any of them.
Like it doesn't piss me off. It's more like it's just funny. I feel like I read comments on my spare time and I love laughing. You know, I'm a pretty funny dude, so I love laughing. So I feel like I see those comments and I'm just like, you know, welcome to the channel. Like, great to have you. But I feel like the number one thing that keeps me from responding to comments, because I feel like I want to, you know, appear as unbiased as possible. So if you blatantly say in a comment that you're a PlayStation fanboy, if you have this really thought out comment like this, you know, you have some opinion and it's really long and I really enjoyed it. And then at the end, you're just like, go Sony, hashtag Sony fanboy, all this stuff. And I'm like,
then I won't like it. That's the quickest way to get me to not like your comment, is ending it with that.
I'm just like, I wanted to respond, I did, but it's just, I feel like, so it keeps me from, I guess, interacting, but not really, it won't ever get me mad, because I feel like if you're a fanboy, if you're not a fanboy, feel free to watch, you know, either way. I feel like the coverage is what's more important, or just, you know, talking about things is cool. But yeah. It's just yeah.
You know what can you do? It was something where, and I've seen some of my, shall we call them colleagues, right? Other people on YouTube that might have a preference for AMD or Nvidia or Sony or Microsoft, but then they try to. I feel like it's easy to overcorrect, right? Because everyone has a preference, right, towards one company, but that doesn't mean you're a fanboy, or that doesn't mean you're not trying extra hard to make sure that doesn't cloud your judgment, which I try, you know, I do try to be as objective as I can. And I just see a lot of tech tubers then overcorrect though. Like, you'll have a tech tuber who clearly likes AMD, and then he'll do a video one time AMD did something wrong and be like, oh, AMD effed up, and like go overboard. Yeah. And it's like, we get it, dude. You're trying to prove you're not a fanboy.
I'm not going to lie. I'm a little bit guilty of this sometimes. You know, like,
we've all done it.
Yeah, I feel like we've all done it. Like, you know, and I just like, you know, it's exactly what you said. You know, I try to like make it clear that I'm not trying to be biased in any sort of way. It's just how I personally feel. And I try to remain objective. And I think, honestly, my problem is, if you ever watch my content is that I make a lot of jokes, like in my, or at least I try to be funny, at least somewhat funny. So I feel like a lot of people just don't. A lot of people, if I'm making a joke on your console of choice,
they might think you're rubbing it in or something.
They might think that I'm rubbing it in, even though I'm just honestly, it's a little bit of crude humor, but that's just the kind of guy that I am. So I feel like I'm gonna make the joke either way. So yeah, but I have been, you know, guilty of overcorrecting a little bit. And I realize it's a good thing I realized it early on and stopped doing that. You know, it's not good to do that. Like, if you're a rising content creator or whatever, like, don't do that. You know, just always stick to your guns. Just try to make sure, keep your head as clear as possible and be objective. But overcorrecting is really bad. It doesn't look good.
You know, some people have this like nihilistic view where they're like, oh, most people are stupid or don't get it. It's like, well, no, most people are pretty good at reading emotions on human faces. So if you're overcorrecting, they can tell, you know, they can tell you're overcorrecting, and it's going to come off as a little cringeworthy. And that's why I've just made my peace with it. And it's like, you know, I have a reader mail section for my patrons to ask me any questions. I literally put a section for making bets against things I've said so that I have to talk to it, or I have a correction section and I just go through, what do you think I got wrong in these videos? It's on you guys to bring it up for my podcast, and then I'll talk about it, because otherwise I'm not going to focus on it. And, but yeah, let's get to one of those. Telos writes in and says, I think the various companies simply get so wrapped up sometimes in one part of a strategy and they forget the rest of it. It can happen if companies get tunnel vision on one thing way too much. And I think that's something I want to talk about a little bit too, because you can have a really good idea for a device, but if you over focus on it, that good idea becomes a bad idea. Yeah. And again, the example I want to use is Kinect. Kinect was a fantastic idea. I remember the first trailer I saw for it. God, when was that? 2011? I don't know. You know, way back then for the 360. And I was like, oh, this is a big deal. Sony's just making a way more accurate version of a Wiimote. But Microsoft's removing the controller. That's an interesting idea. And it sold crazy well. The problem is they then thought that was the only good idea for the rest of time. That doesn't mean Kinect was a bad idea. Kinect was a good idea.
Yeah, for sure. But it should not have been, you know, force-fed to people when the console first dropped. That was definitely a mistake. And going back to his question a little bit to kind of change it up, I feel like when he mentions a company gets wrapped up in a single strategy, we could kind of take this and look at Microsoft and Sony as a whole, right? Like Microsoft, they're trending towards, let's talk about services, sell Games Pass, sell this. And even if I remember correctly, they just announced that you could actually finance an Xbox Series S or X now. Like they've announced,
which I did a video on a month ago saying they were going to do it for $25 a month, and they are. By the way, nice. I just want to give that shout out. But go on, yeah.
Yeah, so they're not financing this. So they're with the finance they're including. I am not sure. I think it was Games Pass and certain.
You get a console. I believe you get the console, no money down, and then you also get. I don't know how long the contract is though. If it's $25 a month, I would hope it's just a 1-year contract. But yeah.
Yeah, like they're offering you these services when you get the console and stuff like that. So it's clear the direction that Microsoft wants to take. Eventually, they just want to just completely get rid of like Phil Spencer said it. He doesn't like the concept of a generation, so to speak. He wants to be a fluidity, kind of more like, the PC market space. So I feel like that's what they're trending towards. And then Sony is
after losing opposite. 3 in a row, I bet they don't like it. Sorry, I had to do a slam. Because let's be honest. Why would... can we just stop? It's not biased for me to say this is an obvious pivot when they can't seem to sell the most consoles any generation. It doesn't matter which one you do. Xbox, tied the GameCube in last. 360 sold less than the PS3 and the Wii. Xbox One sells less than the Switch and the PS4. I think they should stop making consoles because they can't seem to win any generation. And I know this is the soundbite where they say I'm a fanboy, but is anything I just said not a fact, guys? Come on. Yeah,
for sure. Honestly, so it's not surprising that they're going in this direction, and that's what they're doing. Sony, though, they're sticking to the tried and true generations, exclusives, more exclusives, and then some more on top of that. Just keep doing what they if it's not broken, don't fix it. Fair enough, but I feel like eventually this split might get to a breaking point where one is going to come out on top. But I feel like a lot of people are sleeping on the direction that Microsoft is going in just a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
it's obvious.
Yeah, I feel like it's going to be one of those things that just comes out of nowhere and blindsides everyone. It's just, one day it's just going to click. They're going to have 2 games. Or 3 games, 3 great games, 3 God of War. I
saw your video on that. That was an interesting point.
Yeah, 3 God of War type games on Xbox Games Pass, and you could finance a Series S or X for $25 a month. And people are, now they're just going to tack it on their Netflix subscription or their Hulu subscription, their phone bill, and people aren't even going to notice it anymore. All of a sudden, everybody has an Xbox, and now they have these great games on Games Pass, and then it's just going to take one thing to metaphorically break the camel's back. So I feel like further down the line, this could be a huge success for Microsoft, or Sony could keep dominating. I have no idea which tactic is going to work, but I'm not going to discredit the direction Microsoft is going in now, even though they're not really, putting that much oomph into it. I feel like if they just went a bit harder, a little bit harder, they could actually have something on their hands. That's how I feel. So
I actually have a ton to say about that, as you can imagine. I mean, I think the idea of Game Pass is a great idea if nailed correctly. And I think you brought up that idea too, that eventually you could even see them putting it on PlayStation, which we all know they want to do that eventually, I think.
Oh, yeah, for
and sure. You also said, but then eventually PlayStation may put their games on Game Pass, right?
Yeah.
And I think people just need to stop looking at these, they call it a war. I'm putting big parentheses in the air, console wars from a fanboy lens. If you remove the fanboy lens, you can see a future where Sony doesn't care and just throws their games on Game Pass, or where Microsoft doesn't care and they just start putting their games on PlayStation. They don't care. They don't care. Xbox uses Sony Blu-ray players. They don't care. It doesn't matter. They just want to make money. What I would say for Game Pass is, like you said, they need to go harder. I think if they want this to succeed, Sony dug themselves into a financial pit to not lose the PlayStation 3 generation.
Oh, yeah.
And that's because they were in it to win it, baby. Microsoft needs to be in it to win it for this to succeed. And I think that's my hesitancy, is that I'm not sure they will be. I think $25 a month is too much. I think they should have done this if they really want this to succeed. I think it's $15 a month already or something. Like, I think they just should have said, that's it. It's $15 a month. Sign a 2-year contract. We're going to give you the Series S for free.
That would have been insane, honestly.
That's peanuts to them too. Are you going to tell me they're not making the money back? $15 times 24?
They definitely would have. Mm-hmm. That would have been. Exactly,
and they should have launched it sooner. I think launching the Series S at the same time is a mistake. I think this is a small console that even if it's in small quantities, they should try to launch this thing now to get market share before the PlayStation launches. Then again, I don't know, right, if their production would have allowed that, but I think they should have at least tried to launch it first. And that's the problem. That's how I can see Game Pass failing, is if, number one, they never quite make it cheap enough. Like, I'm going to say it, like, have the balls to kill Xbox Live Gold. Kill it. Just kill it. Make online gaming free, and then just say online gaming's free. You remember, what was it? I think during the 360 gen in the beginning, I think games came to silver a week later. Why would you even do that? Like, you're going to say people can't buy something a week? Like, you're like, like that type of old world mentality. They should kill paying for online, kill a lot of these online services. People are buying your or paying for them, I should say. People are buying your console. They should expect an online service. God knows you're tracking them and selling it to advertising people anyways. Like, and I think they should just have the balls to kill Xbox Live Gold and make it $10 a month for all access. No yearly, no yearly subscription option. It's just $10 a month, but you literally get, like, what is it? Like 10 games a month for free or whatever. And if they did that, it could succeed. Then the other problem I see with them, besides not being aggressive enough, which was my point with all of that rambling, is they actually need a good game.
Yeah, they need a poster boy.
Because if they don't have a good game, I'm going to be honest. Like, I have PlayStation Plus, and I don't play half of those games because I just don't feel like it.
Yeah,
first world problems. I think you need to make people want it. You can say you're getting all these games for free, but if it's like a 4-year-old, whatever, right? Like that, wasn't it like the Division 2, I think they put on it, but it wasn't the Division 2 like $3 a month ago?
Yeah,
like come on, man. like you gotta, it can't just be a good deal. It has to be a deal people want. And then they'll keep it because it's a good deal. That's what Netflix did, right? They put all these exclusives on there, shows, and then of course you're going to keep it.
Yeah,
but like, because that's what I'm saying, right? I worry that like Gears of War it's an old series. Halo, God knows how that's going to turn out. Actually, I'm a little more optimistic on the new Halo than I was a week ago after listening to a couple of opinions on it online. But I think they need something like you said. They need a new people, not just the same shit we've had for 10 years. They need a new exclusive on there to really make people sign up.
Exactly. Yeah. And it needs to be mind-blowing, something just insane. Like, they really need to get a studio, not 343, some other studio, and like get them to do something crazy. Like, because honestly, I think a lot of people just like, they look at YouTubers and they're like, oh, this guy's a fanboy, or whatever. And like, I'm just in the camp that if both companies made great games, who would be losing? Honestly, like,
I know, right?
Like, who would like, if we had just as many great Xbox exclusives as we did PlayStation exclusives, who's losing? Like, who cares? Like, I want a God of War.
PlayStation made its best games when 360 was competing. Like, I don't know why people don't get that. Like, the better Xbox does, the better PlayStation does, and vice versa.
Exactly.
Hopefully.
Yeah, exactly. So as soon as you start bringing competition to the table, the consumer wins. Straight up. That's all. It's always been like that. So I feel like twice as many games, twice as many good games. Like, who's losing? Honestly.
Well, so and then this is my other concern with Game Pass, right? The biggest problem I have with that Halo Infinite, showcase that they did opening their game showcase isn't how bad it looked. It's that they actually showed it first, right? Like, that's like, so that means, did Phil Spencer, like, I keep saying this, did Phil Spencer see that? And he was like, yeah, that looks great. Because if he did, he has no clue what a good game looks like. And that's my problem, is that they led with Halo. So I worry they're looking at all these exclusives as just checkboxes, which is I've heard a lot of people say actually about that game showcases. It's like, here's the Ratchet and Clank checkbox, but it doesn't look as good. Here's another Halo. But really, I mean, why even call it Halo Infinite? It might as well be titled The Another Halo, like because it doesn't look new. There's nothing new, you know. And that's the one worry I have is that Microsoft is looking at this from a very suit-like mentality of just like, make sure we have enough checkboxes. But if you don't have that it factor, again, having a bunch of games that just look like the same games from 20 years ago or look like a low-rent version of Ratchet and Clank, people are just going to buy Ratchet and Clank. They'll pay for the experience. People have money, right? Like they will pay for it.
And that's what gets me scared. Like you said, like a whole suit sort of checkbox sort of thing. That's what gets me scared from Microsoft. I feel like, you know, they're a really big company, obviously, like one of the biggest companies in the world. So I feel like down to the Xbox division, like that level, do like the higher ups at Microsoft really care enough? Is that you brought it up, like, or are they just looking for margins everywhere? You got what I mean? Like that, or is that why they introduced Games Pass just for margins, or did they actually have like a revolutionary idea? Did they just look to Netflix and copy it, or are they actually trying to do something? So I feel like they've been missing the it factor, the oomph, or the passion. I feel like they have great ideas. You know, they could do well, but they just got to stop looking towards other places and just do something on their own. And if they did that, I have no doubt in my mind that it would be successful. Like it would. There's no way it wouldn't. You know what I mean? Like. So they really got to dig deep and just do something, honestly.
Yeah, you know, and I think this brings me to like the other side of this tunnel vision concept. And you've alluded to it too. Sony totally could make the same mistake except the other side of the coin.
Oh yeah, yep.
Like they are, and I want to be clear, guys. What I've heard. You know, I did that PlayStation 5 leak. I think the hardware is actually way more capable than people give it credit. Like it's going to do some games that you just straight up can't do anywhere else. And that's clearly what their goal was. But in addition to the hardware leak I had, I talked about these like new exclusives coming, which I'm just going to remind guys, I haven't changed it. I don't know when they're going to reveal it. They have God of War 2 that they've shown behind closed doors.
Yeah,
like they've got that demo.
I saw your video on that.
Yeah.
And I was looking at your video. I was like, is he serious? Honestly,
yes.
Oh man, like if you're right, guys, I don't know if he's right. He doesn't show me things, but if you're right, that's insane. Like shout out to you.
So, but there's that other launch exclusive I hinted at, right? It's still there. They have another launch exclusive they haven't even told you guys about, and there are other ones coming as well that I think. I have to be careful, right? Because I've also heard Sony's going like full on warmocked on leakers right now. Like, so I have to be careful what I reveal because it might give away something. But basically, my understanding is I had two sources say cryptically something like this: whatever exclusives you think they could be bringing, it's probably all of them. Like Sony's buying studios, and my understanding, and again, I've heard a few people say this now, is that near the halfway through the PlayStation 4 generation, they realized they've won. So they had a lot of studios that were going to crank out late-gen games. Obviously, The Last of Us Part 2 is actually meant to come out like halfway through the gen or something, I think, but it was delayed.
It got delayed.
So that one still came out on PS4. And there are all these other games, though, that they said, just program it for something that might be 4 times, 5, 6 times better and it'll run. You know, like my understanding is that they put down their hand and said, these are now PS5 games, so we don't need them on PS4. And so they have a whole mountain of exclusives they're ready to reveal whenever they want. It just matters when they want to. You haven't seen half of what they've got yet, guys. And so, you know, that's them doubling down on this, what won them the PS3 gen, at least relative to software sales, I guess, as you would put it, that we sold more consoles, is having a lineup of exclusives that no one can compete with. The problem is, man, if they don't change fundamentally what PlayStation Plus and PlayStation Now is, I really do. And then, like you said, which is something for some reason I didn't even think of, you know, and then they get something that is actually a new series and as good as God of War on Game Pass. I think they'll still sell consoles, right? People will still buy the PS5 for their games, but they're leaving a lot of money on the table. And this is the tunnel vision that I think will work well initially, but could completely backfire on them. they could find themselves a dinosaur, right, in a few years.
They're doing great now. Like, like I said, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. But eventually, just change it up a little bit. No one's going to be mad if you have like a competitor to Games Pass, or eventually, I know that's a far-fetched idea right now for Sony, but eventually, no one's going to be mad. Everyone's going to buy. I bet you everyone's going to buy it. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, they should really just start thinking of doing something just a bit different.
Well, the funny thing is Xbox still has xCloud or whatever it is in beta, and Sony already has PS Now. Like, I think what a lot of people might be underestimating is how easy it would be for Sony to make their own version of Game Pass, like just snapping finger.
Yeah.
Like, they already kind of do with PlayStation Plus. Like, and I think but I'm going to be honest, and I think PS Now has games on it where you can download them and play them locally without even streaming. So it's
certain games,
kind of like All Access. Like, this is where I go, look, if Sony wants to make sure they check the boxes that protect them from having a weak spot this gen, they just need to kill PS Now and bundle it with PlayStation Plus. Like, and I think PlayStation Plus is a better name, frankly.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. Like, it would be pretty easy for them to just get rid of PS Now, combine it with PS Plus. Like, I don't know why they don't do that, except for cost maybe, but...
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. So if they combine it, would they change the cost or add it as like an option, or what are you thinking on that?
I mean, I don't know. I would almost wonder if they should do the same thing we've already said Xbox should do, which is, kill paying for online, which I think, can we agree, if Xbox, which has been rumored, if Xbox kills pay to play online, Sony will just do that too, right? They kind of have to. And they kind of already do, right? I think GTA 5 and like a bunch of games are already free to play on PlayStation Online.
Yeah, exactly. I think they just did it because they saw the original the 360 just making so much free money off of it. They're like, we could probably do this too. So they did. So, but yeah, if Xbox kills it, I'm sure Sony will follow soon. Like, they won't be that far behind. But to add on to what you said, so bundling PlayStation Now into PS Plus, or just getting rid of PlayStation Now and including it with PS Plus, I see two outcomes. So I feel like if they increase the price, so if they increase the price and make it not an option to not have it, that's a mistake. But if they increase the price and only do so as an option, I don't think many things will change, besides change the name. So I feel like they would have to either put it and increase the price, or put it and lose all those subscribers from PlayStation Now. And I think both of them is a lose-lose situation, at least initially, because I think PlayStation Now, I read this crazy statistic, has something like, I can't remember exactly, but a ridiculous amount of subscribers. Like,
more than you would expect.
Yeah, more than you would expect.
It used to be one of the most successful streaming game services. I think it's been passed now by someone. I don't remember who. I think it isn't anymore. Right. I think it depends. Like, I think Xbox All Access is doing better than PS Now, though.
Okay.
That's not really the same thing, you could argue, because xCloud isn't really up and running yet. But
yeah. So they have so many subscribers, right? So if they put it into PS Plus and kill the pricing, they just add it for free. That's a lot of money, that's being left on the table. And I think people underestimate how much money that, is being lost there. Cause I didn't want to say a number, but the number that's floating around in my head is 2 million subscribers. Right? That's what's floating in my head.
That might be true. Yeah. I mean, go on though. Yeah,
that's what's floating in my head. The number is floating is 2 million subscribers, and I think it's what I can't even remember the price. Maybe $9.99 a month. That's
2.2 million. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just looked it up.
That's a considerable amount of money, that they're losing out on. Of course, they're a big company. What does it matter? It's not like this. They're gonna fall off the market if they do that. But so it's gonna be a win for us. So if that happens, they're really gonna need to figure out a way to just get more people to buy PS Plus, but if you get rid of pay to play online, right? That's another thing. If you get rid of that, not many. Let's be serious. If you didn't have to buy PS Plus to play, would I get it?
I would. Because I like the backing up the saves, the free games, all of that stuff. And and I've heard a lot of people I listen to on podcasts say they would still keep, whatever, like an Xbox or a PlayStation service if it didn't require paying for online. But I don't know if we're just the heavy users. I don't know how many people, I don't know if we would, because we're the enthusiasts. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I wonder if, I don't know. I don't know if most people would cancel it. I don't know.
I think, honestly, most people might. It just depends,
But then that means you need to make PS Plus actually good.
Exactly.
Right?
That's
just
what I was
like
gonna
Xbox
say.
All
Yeah.
Access, right?
That's exactly what I was going to say. If you do that, the games are actually going to need to be worth it. And that's going to open like a whole nother can of worms. Like, how are you going to get that many games on there? You know, do you really want to put this game in this subscription service, even though you like exclusives, the concept of exclusives? So then you're like clashing at the top level of like what direction you want to go in. So it's kind of like, it goes back to that fundamental switch. Like, what do they want to do? Because I feel like going down the route that you mentioned is going to be like, you know, they might end up running into a brick wall with what they've always been doing. So,
well, you know, and it's funny. You almost wonder, because you're right. You know, it would be kind of jarring if just overnight Sony did that. They're just like, hey, just out of nowhere, we're killing, you know, basically one of the main parts of PlayStation Plus. But now PlayStation Now is gone. Sorry if you were paying more for it. Now, you know, like, and now we're jacking up the price of this. People will be confused. Like, wait, so now my PlayStation Plus subscription costs more, but I get more. You almost wonder if they need to like do it slowly. Like they need to like slowly start merging them over the next year and then just take a step back and finally say, yeah, we combine them. You know, like, because do you remember PlayStation Core? I think it was spelled Qore.
No, nope.
Yeah, it's pretty niche. So early in the PlayStation 3 generation, they were trying all different types of things, throwing stuff at the wall. They kind of created a subscription service light that was called PlayStation Core, and it would come with like exclusive betas, demos, trailers, eventually content every month. And then you'd also get this like monthly show. And they did that for like a year or 2 years or something. And then it may have just been 1 year. I don't know, right? Like, I think I remember the first episode, you got like the PlayStation the SOCOM confrontation beta. So that's why I remember it. And of course, that game didn't work either. But I think then PlayStation Plus comes out, and then PlayStation Plus gives you all these betas and demos for free. And and then like Core let you have trials of games before you bought them. But then PlayStation Plus added that. And eventually it was like, wait, why does Core still exist, guys? And then like within a month, they were like, yeah, we're canceling it, by the way, guys. You know, and I wonder if they need to do something similar so it's not, no one cares about Core, so it's not a good example. But like, I wonder if they need to do a similar thing where they just slowly merge it over time. You know, because I think, do we agree they need to do it though eventually? Like they do.
Sure.
They need to compete with Xbox All Access. So they can't, whether it's jarring or a loss of money or not, it's like, well, you know, you sold the PS3 at an absurd loss because you wanted to win. Do you still want to win? Because you're going to have to.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
But I think, you know, I guess one of my points is when people say so there's no way Sony can compete with Xbox All Access, it's like, well, they just combine two services they already have, and they are, guys. I don't know about that, you know. And it's just like you say, you know, Xbox can't compete. Well, they will when they want to. You know, they just need to actually make good games.
Yeah, because they have the money. Trust me. They definitely have the money.
Gosh, Reese, why does Windows 10 Professional have to be so expensive?
Don't listen to that, nerd. Listen to me. You can get all the great Windows and gaming keys you need at CDK Offers. I have a plan. Go to cdkoffers.com to get all the Windows Professional and Microsoft Office keys you need, and games as well. Add them to your cart, and you can even apply one of them City Slicker promotional codes like DashRink for 3% off software and Broken Silicon for 25% off all Windows codes. I do have an account on this website, and it is ultra easy to use. Just submit your order, use PayPal, credit card, or Bitcoin, and go to Windows website to download Microsoft Professional. One more time, that's go to cdkoffers.com. They are a fantastic sponsor of Moore's Law is Dead. Use offer code DashRink for 3% off everything on the website, and Broken Silicon for 25% off all Windows products. Now, back to the show.
Yeah. All right, so let's switch gears a bit here, as you can see where we're going on this script. So Confirmed SK writes in and says, do you think NVIDIA showcasing the RTX 3090 running 8K games was a jab at the consoles? Because I'm not certain that the RTX 3080 with 10 gigabytes could do the same thing. I mean, no, 10 gigabytes of RAM isn't enough to run 8K. Oh, in a lot of games. I'm sure there's plenty of games where it actually is enough RAM still. But I think that to answer confirmed SK directly, I think the 8K reference was just to justify the $1,500 price, whether it actually runs it well or not. You know what I mean?
I agree. I don't think Nvidia, I'm sure Nvidia does care about competing with consoles, but I don't think they're concerned with that. They're more concerned about, like you said, justifying the price or just competing with AMD. Like, I don't really think they're specifically saying consoles can't do this and we can. Nah, at least I wouldn't assume so. Not like,
I think to a certain degree, though, right? Like when people are surprised the RTX 3070, which should be a bit stronger, at least in brute performance than the consoles, is $500. It's like they need to, though, have something stronger than the consoles for the price of the entire console. Or the amount of comments I've seen of people looking at prices of what they thought these graphics cards were going to cost and going, I'm just going to rage quit into consoles. Like people will, right? If the consoles were stronger than an equivalent NVIDIA graphics card, people will rage quit into consoles, I think. Some of them will. I don't know. Maybe you disagree with that.
So wait, let me just clarify. So if you're saying if there wasn't a card like the 3070 that would just be, just a bit better than the consoles.
Yeah, I mean, I think
people would leave.
And I want to be clear what I mean by that, because there's going to be some people, especially NVIDIA fanboys, who jump in here and go, oh, it's 10 times stronger than the consoles. It's like, no, it's not, guys. First, and I do need to actually say this, I think, even though it's a little off subject. So, and I made this clear in my last video about NVIDIA and AMD competition. They say the 3070 is a 20 teraflop card. Okay, well, they're also openly saying it's the same performance as the 13.5 teraflop 2080 Ti. So clearly, Ampere teraflops are not equal to a Turing teraflop when it comes to gaming performance. Teraflops do not equal gaming performance, people. And so I think it's about 2/3. So yeah, I mean, I would say, what is that then? That's like literally like 13 or ish teraflops should be in Turing, which is about the same IPC as the consoles. So yeah, I mean, I think the 3070 is probably about 15% to 20% stronger than the GPU in the Xbox Series X. And I know this is when the PC Master Race people try to destroy me, but like that, it's about 20% better, guys. I mean, it's probably better at ray tracing, but they need to have that stronger and the same price as the Series X, or I mean, that would be ridiculous, don't you think?
Yeah. So now I get what you mean. So now, do I think people are going to, if they didn't have that, do I think people would leave if they didn't? I want to say no. I don't think so. Because I think it goes back to like the whole, concept of if you have a PC, you're probably a bit more technologically inclined, or at least a bit more interested in the stuff. So I feel like, let's be serious. If you're on PC, you're not here to save money. If we were, we'd be like, honestly, like we're not here to like, of course people are here to build budget gaming rigs. People, there is that market of people who want to be PC players and, want to have the most efficient, build that they can. And that's fine, but like by and large, even if you could build a PC, if a PC player had the option to get a $400 console or build a $400 PC, like, with, same, let's say that
I think most would build the PC because they want to build a PC.
Exactly, because they want to build the PC. So would people leave? For sure. I'm sure tons of people would leave. And if you add a little bit of more incentive, I don't know, whatever that incentive may be, I'm sure people would leave, but off like the jump off the rib, I don't think many people.
You don't think most?
Yeah, most. Yeah, I'm gonna say most, but there is definitely people who would leave, but just not most. Is what I was saying.
I was gonna say, because I actually kind of want to play devil's advocate here.
Okay.
And here's why.
Okay.
I think most years you're right, but if we go back to my theory that people rage quit consoles and built PCs, I have a lot of friends who did that. I'm like, right. So some of that comes from my own anecdotal evidence, but I know a lot of people that built these gaming PCs in like 2015, and then they had driver issues or Windows update caused blue screens for a little bit. I'm sure you've dealt with that too, like all of these ridiculous Windows updates. And I think if you've always been a PC gamer like me or you're just like, yep, I don't know what to tell you. Yeah, that's just life. But I have a lot of friends who say, maybe I don't want to be a PC gamer because they can't deal with it, and it happens, And I play games with some of my friends. I've my gaming group, right? And we get on at least a couple times a week, especially with my brother, who's the co-host of most episodes. And there will be times where we just want to get on Battlefield 5. Oh, it turns out there was an update and now I need to download new drivers. And now now the controller's not activating on this game. So it's hard to drive the tanks. Why is that not working? And, if we just boot up, say we have a Zombie Army 4 on the PlayStation just because it was on sale when we wanted to play it. Mm-hmm. That's always worked when I pressed X, yeah. And I think there's a lot of people that built PCs because of how long the generations were dragging on and because they did get this master race perception that are realizing maybe they do just want to plug in something to a TV and sit back and game. So I don't know. I think you kind of said that though, right? That there are some who would leave, but I don't know what the number is though. I think there are a lot of people that are into PC. A lot of people write me reader mails and say in my YouTube comments, if all I do, I don't care about how many cores Zen has, for instance, or whatever, I just want my PC for gaming. What's the best price performance? And I'm like,
a console.
And I think there are more people that just build a desktop to game than I think me or you would think, right? You're majoring in a major that would require a decent PC. So did I. But I don't think most people do that.
Yeah, now that you bring it up, I think you did kind of, change my mind a little bit, just a little bit. You're totally right. When you brought it up, me or you, at least me with what I do, I don't even use my PC to game as much. I feel like I split it up mainly with how I work between, whatever it may be, school, YouTube, or school, gaming, and YouTube. And whenever I make my YouTube videos, rendering times and stuff like that. So I feel
that's what I want to know.
Yeah, exactly. Whenever I do that, that's why I have whatever processor I have in here. Or that's why my processor is like this, or that's why I have this graphics card because I need this X amount of RAM.
That's why I have a Radeon 7. People are like, do you regret getting the Radeon 7 or are you going to sell it now? And it's I use my Radeon 7 as 16 gigs of RAM and it already has, I think it's overclocked to 14 teraflops already, guys.
Yeah.
And it's no, that doesn't translate directly into gaming performance, but it sure shit renders these videos I make for you guys faster.
Exactly.
So that's why I have it, That's why I have a whatever $1,000 PC.
Exactly. Yeah. So I feel like that's a big part for me. So my judgment and your judgment might be a little bit skewed. And that's kind of what you made me realize that, I use it for content creation and for school and stuff like that. But for the people who just use it to game and don't care about the cores and don't care about the specs, that's an interesting question. They probably would end up leaving. Now the question becomes, what percentage do they make up of people who actually play PC? And I have no clue. I have no idea.
It should be something where, but there was because I've done polls on my YouTube channel that'll get 10,000 responses. I can get some pretty decent numbers in the polls I put out there. But then, anyone who follows my channel probably going to skew very heavily into the enthusiast side that uses their PC for more than just gaming. Mm-hmm. But it would be good if it would be funny if I reached out to another channel. I'm trying to think of a more, if I could find a console, some IGN YouTube channel and get them to do the poll. And then combine it with my info and see what the numbers suggest. Because I do wonder what it is. Because, it's I think we both kind of said yes and no at the same time. The only thing we may disagree on is guessing what that percentage is.
Yeah, exactly. Me personally, I would assume that it's on the lower end. Maybe definitely, in my opinion, definitely not high. It wouldn't be 30% or anything like that. I'd feel like it'd probably be in the 20s if I had to guess. Maybe. That may be a bit high. I don't know. That's just a ballpark. Well, what would you say?
The people, see, it's hard because now I need to classify what the percentages we're pulling from. So 20% of what? All people who build desktops? Or am I talking about the 20% of people who watch my channel? I think that's the only thing I can even guess accurately at. So I'll just do that.
Okay.
And then you also have to remember, my last guess was Daniel Nenny, who founded semiwiki.com. So I have plenty of followers who are into servers and stuff. So, I think at least though of the views I get, which I get more views than subscribers usually. So that's fair, I guess. I think a third of the people who watch my videos just want their PC. Let's call it 75% for gaming, and that they would make do with an older PC as long as it could still render well if they needed to and just get a console. I think a third. And I think mine is an enthusiast biased percentage. But I don't feel comfortable hazarding a percentage guess at whatever the greater the greater numbers are. But I'd say my viewers, I think a third do. I'm sure we're going to find out in the comments.
Yeah, sure. And there's going to be tons of people taking each other's heads off. No, it's this, it's that. I
mean, we already talked about PlayStation 3 and Xbox One, so there was already going to be flame wars. I've just made my peace with that. Let's actually switch gears directly to this, though. This is kind of like we were touching on it here. I just want to talk with you openly. Like, when are people going to get through their heads that no single spec is what determines frame rates or performance, like teraflops? Like, I think you've ranted about this a dozen times too, that you cannot believe people are just, how many people think teraflops directly equal gaming performance?
Honestly, this is going to sound bad, but I wholeheartedly blame Microsoft for this greater thing, because how much they pushed it with the Series X. Like, they just kept pushing it and pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. So then kind of like people just started rolling with it. Because like we brought up before, like we kind of hinted towards it, that in the last console generation release, that it wasn't as big of a thing as it was this time around. That just has to do with like the marketing that Microsoft has been doing. And, to their credit, like teraflops, while it doesn't indicate, performance in games, these two,
it's an indication of some things.
Yeah, it's an indication of some things. So generally speaking, more teraflops technically maybe will be better. You know what I'm saying? I don't even want to say yes, because
if we could have 100 teraflops, if I had the button right here that says make the PS5 100 teraflops, that would technically make it better usually.
Exactly. Usually.
But how many ROPs does it have? Can it actually fill the pixels with those,
Yeah, like, you know what I'm saying? So it's just like, yeah, I feel like, so when people are going to get it through their heads, I hope soon, because, there's so many other things that go into it. And like we said, it's better to have it than to not. But at the end of the day, there's going to be other things that it depends on. So we're just going to have to see. I think at least me and you, that we've been, preaching that message. So at least our viewers, I feel like, they have that idea floating around in their heads. But then the people who come to our channel, like, let's say just got the video recommended, they won't believe us. They're just going to go away and not do anything. So, I mean, it's going to take like a massive forces of every community to just be like, yeah, this doesn't matter. And as where the community sits right now, that's not going to happen. I feel like everybody, like, at least like the way bigger people, and even like, Microsoft themselves are saying, this is it. This is that. Teraflops are the way to go. We have the more powerful console, but then go ahead and drop a 4 teraflop console. I don't know. Great job, Microsoft. So it's like, yeah, we're just, the whole market is going to need to shift. Like the way, and I'm surprised that Sony didn't really have like a direct rebuttal.
Answer?
Yeah,
rebuttal.
To that. Yeah, to that, that whole marketing ploy. I mean, technically they did, they went.
The games will speak for themselves. Yeah, that's exactly, what they've said.
Exactly what they said, but they didn't really ever bring it up. They said, yeah, our console is 10.3, less cool, but we're gonna let the game. We're gonna show you the games. So that, yeah.
Well, one thing that I find funny about the whole teraflops warriors is they'll admit it. You're focusing on just a single spec, and it's funny because they will disregard all of the other specs. So it's so funny how you seem to think, and let's be clear about this. It's 18% more teraflops. It's not even 25 or 30 or 4. Like, it's not that much. Like, I think the PlayStation 4 was 50% more than the Xbox One. And there were people poo-pooing that difference. But it was really the bandwidth, too. It wasn't the teraflops, if you ask me. Like, if you look at that spec alone, and you're just going to die on this hill of 18% better, it's very interesting you're dying on that hill while ignoring that the PlayStation 5 has over double the SSD bandwidth. Like, that's a really interesting that's the only stat that matters, and it's only 18% different. They have the same amount of RAM. They both have 8 cores. I think the Xboxes can clock their 8 core 6% faster or something. Again, like, okay. So it seems like you're focusing on the smallest number differences, and you're ignoring this one stat here, SSD performance, that's over twice as good. So interesting that you die on this hill. That's the smallest difference.
And you know what's funny? I want to know what you think about this. There seems to be, I don't know if you get a lot of these comments, but I get so many comments on my videos. Like whenever I mention the PS5's SSD, a lot of people come onto my videos and they say, oh, it's funny how you brought up the PS5's SSD and this, that, but you didn't bring up velocity architecture or direct storage, and you didn't bring up this because this will make the Xbox's SSD actually match the PlayStation's SSD. I'm just like, what are you reading, man? Like, honestly, like, where'd you get this? And at first I responded to all those comments. I tried to be like, fair.
It's not worth it anymore.
Yeah, exactly. At some point, I'm just like, okay, I'm just gonna let this dude rant because you're just wrong. I don't know what else to tell you. Like, I don't even want to go into that conversation.
Yeah, the whole velocity architecture thing is funny because I a lot of my, and I put in air quote sources, I just use that as a loose term because I don't want to, because if I use specifics, people could figure out who I talk to. But I've been very open that some of them, especially in my last video, I just said, some of them are like people who work at DICE, and they don't really usually have insider info on next gen hardware, but they can at least tell me what the bullshit is because they're using it. And I had one programmer say an angel dies every time someone says Xbox velocity architecture.
Let me tell and it's the craziest thing. I've never wanted to say it because obviously I don't have sources. I'm not a programmer for games, so I don't know all these things, but I've always had the haunting suspicion that they branded it. And that's all they've done. But they haven't done anything, or at least nothing revolutionary to it. They just wanted to put a name to it that people could reference. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's it. That's how I've always felt deep down. I've just never wanted to say it because I didn't know if I was right, honestly. But that's how I felt.
You know what? Let's, since we're on the subject, I'll just say it. My understanding is it is capable theoretically of more than what a PlayStation fanboy would say. A PlayStation fanboy would say it's nothing but a buzzword. It's more than that, this velocity architecture. But yeah, you're right. It is really a buzzword for a bunch of different things. But it is actually something interesting for streaming and assets. It is a thing. So the PlayStation fanboys are wrong if they say it's nothing. But it's not anywhere near as capable as some people are making it out. Exactly. I mean, if we're being honest, they have their own I/O controllers. And again, I'm not saying this because I'm a fanboy. I'm just saying it because its competition is the PlayStation 5. That's why I'm bringing up the PlayStation 5. The I/O controllers are less than half as capable as what's in the PS5s. The bandwidth is less than half as much. The peak bandwidth is actually way lower. The PlayStation 5s can peak to 22 gigabytes per second.
Which is ridiculous.
I know. Yeah. So for everyone who's listening, when they say we want to be able to stream in assets as you're walking, so let's see, there's 16 gigabytes of RAM in the PS5. You would need the peak bandwidth to get to over 16 so they could load the RAM in under a second. That's what people need to realize. So when they say the velocity architecture can do the same thing, no, its peak is 6 gigabytes. And that's just if it was all textures. Most of the assets aren't a lot of the assets aren't textures. The effective is what they said. People want me to bring up things like BC Pack and all of this other stuff. It's look, guys, the numbers are the numbers. All right. It's 4.8 gigabytes. There are some parts of it that are peak. The average is about 4.8 gigabytes a second after their decompression block and all of that. That's what it is. So even theoretically, though, 4.8 divides 16, right, by 4.8, there's going to be at least 3-second load times. Theoretically. You can't, this is physical math. This is the bandwidth of loading. This is how much RAM is in the system. 3-second load times at best. It's probably going to be a little less. And so that's all you can say. The only other thing I can say about the velocity architecture is I've heard it's actually maybe a bit cumbersome to use. It takes a lot of work to program. Yeah. I'm I'm not a programmer, so this is just one of the programmers. There's more than one, but a couple programmers saying that. So, but yeah, I mean, what was I getting back on subject after we just vented a little bit? When it comes to the teraflops versus performance, I just think this is going to be unless AMD completely fucks up their graphics cards this year, which I hope not.
Me too.
I think they're going to be good. I think that's going to be the lesson that teraflops aren't equal to performance. Ampere couldn't have come out at a more perfect time to demonstrate this even harder than Xbox and PlayStation. Do you know how many teraflops the 3080 is?
See, now that's what I was just about to ask you that. I was going to ask you. You mentioned that the 3070 was 20 teraflops. That's accurate?
Yeah. It's on their official slides. And it has the same performance as the 13.5 teraflop 2080 Ti.
So that's pretty much, that's all you need to say. I'm convinced. Not that I wasn't.
What do you think the 3080 is 30 teraflops?
30 teraflops. Wow.
And guess what? and I'm getting, just so everyone knows, like the PC gamers listening who don't hate me by now, the 3080s are delivered to the reviewers by now, guys. Like the reviews come out next week. So they're testing it. And yes, I have connections. If I have sources that, right, it's easy to understand that I may have some friends who are already testing these cards. I'm told it's not 45% stronger. I'm told it's like 35% stronger than the 2080 Ti on average. I really don't have more details than that, just so everyone knows. It's about 35%, right? Maybe even closer to 30% better than the 2080 Ti, despite having, I'm like banging on my desk, 30 teraflops. It is over double the teraflops of the 2080 Ti, 35% more performance, just so everyone's aware, and at least in rasterization. So that should just tell you how irrelevant the teraflops number is. What Ampere did is they just took the compute units and they just packed in a shit ton of cores, and that's it.
Teraflops go up because, some people, you'd be surprised how ridiculously simple. Well, it's not simple, right? Like I was going to say how ridiculously simple computing teraflops is. Like, from a computer engineering standpoint, but a lot of the times, I see like this common equation that you take the cores and have them and multiply. I can't remember exactly what it was. That's not. It's a shortcut. It's technically accurate, but there's other things that you have to take into consideration.
That's just theoretical, right?
Yeah, it's theoretical. But like even like on the more technical side, you'd be surprised like how ridiculously easy the equation is. Like you look at the equation, because the way it is, it's like you have the number of cores, like the number of cores or the number of like processors or like, whatever, CUDA cores, whatever it may be. And you have it, I can't remember the equation, but it's like over something else times something else times something else, and like a bunch of like other constants that in and of themselves don't really matter too much towards like, gaming, like ever, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, or even like general performance. It's more because I think it was originally designed to measure general performance across everything. Like the measurement was invented to general performance across everything. So like
theoretical
performance, exactly. So you can't ever pick out one specific thing and say teraflops is good for this. You can't say rendering, gaming, whatever it may be. The teraflops help you here. I'm sure if you took an average of everything that ever existed that you could do on a graphics card, then teraflops might start to be a bit more. Even then, who knows? No one's ever tried it. So I'm sure if you did, it'd be a lot closer to, what teraflops are trying to indicate, because it's like a general thing, like so general that you can't really just pick out one thing and say, oh, okay, teraflops is a good measurement here. Like that's never going to be the case, like ever.
Yeah, I made my own scratch math converters for performance, where I try to convert performance differences between similar architectures. And it's something to like averaging out the increase of bandwidth and then the increase of shaders and then the increase of clock speeds. But then also I take into account ROPs, right?
Yeah.
And it's a lot of guessing, like there's a lot more, right? And that's only to compare against the same architectures. And it's still usually off by 10%. Right? Like there's a lot more that goes into performance. And so going back to the teraflops argument, I mean, this is something I forgot to bring up on my last video. I think we're going to see RDNA 2 cards come out, even if they don't take the performance crown, which I don't think they're going to. Yeah. I think they're going to beat the 3070 and come closer to the 3080 than you'd think. And you know what, guys? I know top Big Navi is supposed to be 80 compute units, and if you take do this equation we've been talking about, like 64 shaders per compute unit times this times clock speed, blah, 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 you get to about 20.24 teraflops. And I think that's going to be a lot stronger than the 3070, at least 10 to 20%. Well, more than that, actually, I think. But, and I think people are just going to look right there and go, oh, that's like within 20% at least of the 3080, maybe within 10% or beating it. And it has 2/3 the teraflops. And that's when people are going to go, Oh, Nvidia was just trying to just get us to buy their cards with these crazy huge numbers. Crazy huge because these are really probably not really meant for gaming, by the way, guys.
Yeah, for sure. Like 30, and you said that?
36 teraflops for the 3090.
And how much more powerful is that than the 3080, would you think?
My guess was 14 to 18%. I'm kind of hearing it's closer to the lower number, probably 15% better. Okay. So, they just added 20% more teraflops. It's probably 10, and it's probably because of the bandwidth. It has 20% more bandwidth. That's what's making it perform that much better than the 3080. It's not the teraflops, guys. I mean, and I guess just to kind of switch gears again, I think. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Do you have anything else to say about the whole teraflops debate and like these specs between these consoles? Because just to be clear, I also hear that the PS5 and Xbox Series X, which I think they have the same amount of ROPs, 64. So they like literally my understanding of the Xbox die is it's like literally just a PS. Well, it's not literally. There are other differences actually, but it's like a similar organization, right? And then they just put more compute units in different parts of it and then added more bandwidth. That's it. It's all they've done to the Xbox die. It's the same ROPs. In fact, I know the PS5 has its own architectural differences for like compute units and stuff. But I want to talk about the SSDs a little bit too, because I actually think they're a lot cheaper than maybe you or a lot of people think. I actually don't think these SSDs are that expensive, to be honest.
Okay, so personally, I would guess that it's a bit more expensive, at least the PlayStation SSD.
Well, it has to be.
Yeah, it has to be. Like, or even I would guess that, in my opinion, it would probably be a bit more of a concern. All right, so let's say the PlayStation 5, because there's rumors that it costs around $450 to make, right? So in my opinion,
that's what I get too, by the way, doing my own estimation.
Okay, so if we say that it's around there, and what would you say like a normal console, like let's say, last gen, if a console released at that price point for last gen, how much do you think the price of an SSD, if you were to put it in there, would cost releasing today? Like usually, let's say like a normal amount.
Are you asking an SSD from back then?
No, let's say today. So let's just say if a console, irrespective of these two, just released today. So
just a general SSDs, you can go on Amazon and get these SSDs from China with like these sometimes hilarious names like Butterfly SSD company. What is this? No name from China or South Korea. And they will be like $30 for like 256 gigabytes or something, and a lot of that cost isn't even just the silicon chips. Those aren't that expensive. It's just the fact that they actually had to put them in a chassis and ship them to you, right? So the bigger you get in capacity, it gets a little better. So I really think that the Xbox's SSD doesn't cost more than $70. And in fact, I wouldn't be surprised if it was 50. And it's because of the volume of scale. They are making millions of these, and the flash storage isn't actually that expensive. What makes the Xbox's SSD impressive is that decompression block they're baking into the silicon that makes it punch far above what it normally would, right? And then I think the PlayStation's is probably no more than like $150. I actually think it could be closer to 100, 120. What the cost for Sony was developing it, right?
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up. Definitely development costs, 100%. Like, I think, yeah, like, I was going to say, like, in my estimate, if the thing costs $450 to make, I was going to say, like, in the ballpark of the high 100s, I was going to say, like, 180 to 200. But that's a little bit weird, because if you say that, then where's the rest of the cost going? Like, for the...
Well, so yeah, let me say this too then. Like, I built my gaming PC in December. Okay. And SSD prices have gone up a bit. There's been this whole global supply chain problem caused by some virus, apparently, that's causing that. I don't know if you've heard of it. But before that happened, it was a good deal, I'll admit it. But it was a Gen 4 SSD, 5 gigabytes per second. And I got it for $150 for a terabyte. So there's a markup in the PC hardware space. And I got it for $150. So I don't think the PlayStation 5s, because remember, they're going to sell it at cost. You're going to remove that profit margin. So I think the PlayStation 5s isn't more than $150. Now, there's probably more cooling involved because it's really powerful, and that's its whole other discussion. But I don't think it's as much as people think.
Okay, so I'm going to agree with you there. Like, they definitely will sell it at cost. Like, whatever it costs to make or however much they get it for in bulk, they're going to sell it for that. But at least in my mind, like, what they would need to sell it. When I was making my estimates, I was thinking what they would need to sell it at to make it worth it for them. So I think that's like a little bit of my bias. I feel like, they spent so much time, developing it, and, it spent years of, trying to interviewing people and seeing what they want and putting all this money into it and stuff like that, and actually, engineering the thing, and then finally got it just right. So now they could mass produce it. Now the mass production, as you've mentioned, is not what's the problem. If they decided to sell it for what it costs, then yeah, I would 100% agree with you. But in my head, I was thinking, all right, they spent all this time, all this effort into it. How are they going to make their they're not their money backs, but like,
you're gonna
their
buy
time
games.
back.
Make their money.
Exactly. Yeah. So I feel like,
and I also know, like, one of my earliest sources on the PS5 was someone who helped develop it in the early years, and he was connected to a company called Marvell. And so this was like a co-development, my understanding, between Sony and Marvell. And they're going to use this tech to sell to enterprise, a professional version of this for servers. So that's where they're going to make that money, by the way. Like, this is a whole thing like the cell processor, except this isn't stupid. The cell processor is stupid. But yeah, and when it comes to the bill of materials, I pulled it up while you were talking, actually. Okay. I mean, my estimate is the die is not more than because again, this is going to be like a 300 millimeter square die, I think. Okay. Like at most, probably smaller, actually. And I think that's like silicon's it's pretty dirt cheap, guys. Like, I'm probably overestimating. I think that's like $90. I think if you do and they're using dual GDR6 chips, so it's per 2 gigabytes. So it's like, I say that's $11 times 8, since they're making 10 million by March, by the way. So that's a lot. That's a high volume that they can divide this over. Turns out there's no DDR in the background for background tasks. They can just kind of use the SSD because of how fast it is. So that was a cost in the PS4 that isn't in this now because they have the SSD. So you put like $88 for RAM, the MOBO, again, I don't know, guessing $30. The I/O controllers, I don't know, right? The I/O controllers may just be baked into the silicon. I'm not sure, right? I just threw $15 PSU, 50 these power supplies are cheap. Like $15 wireless card. I do happen to know that they're using Wi-Fi 6 and some pretty advanced networking for PSVR 2, I think. So a lot of Wi-Fi cards are like $5 if they were selling them at cost. So I'm just going to put 15. Let's say 20 for the case, cooling 15, controller, 30. Like, even if I add the controller and Blu-ray player, my total cost, and I even account for risk. Like, you have to understand, my previous job, I was a sales engineer. So my job was literally constructing builds of materials sometimes. Like, I think this thing comes to, $450. I think it comes to $450 with the disc version. I think they removed the disc. It's like $420, #lit. And then they can just, and that's why I think when you look at the price of the Xbox for $500, I think that what they want to do, if they were smart, is sell the discless version for $100 less, no matter what they decide to sell the top version for, because then they're locked into the ecosystem, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, for sure. At least me, I was thinking about it. If the thing costs $450 to make, and if they want it to be crazy, I think they're probably at least going to sell it at $450. Now that it's been revealed that the Series X is going to be $499. I might be wrong, but I'd say if they really want to attack, how they've been attacking, or like how you've been saying how they have like exclusive.
I think they should.
I think they should. Yeah, exactly. I think they should. $450, and then the discless version $350, or $349. You have a really good bargain, even if the Series S is $299. Like, you have.
There are people clawing at their face that you suggested it could be just $350. By the way.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like, of course, 100%. Like, I'm not saying it's going to happen, and I even said that it's if they wanted to be as aggressive as possible. This is all with the big asterisk.
I've said that for months, so we're on the same page.
Exactly. So this whole everything I just said has a huge asterisk next to it. It's like, if they wanted to win, they would do that. Like, if they were desperate enough to. But then again, they sold the PS3 at a deficit for that much more. So
right. So I also have a calculator here where I know the deficits of the previous gens. The PS4, I believe, was sold at a 10% loss at most. So I think we should at least expect that, because they bundled Connect. Sony, frankly, was able to get away with selling the PS4 for, frankly, a little more than they probably could have gone down to if the Xbox was even more competitive. The PS4 was dirt cheap to make, guys. It's actually, by the way, on a side note, crazy. They're still selling the PS4 for more than like $200. Like, they're making a killing on each one of those goddamn things by now. Insane. I mean, come on. But the 40 gigabyte. I know the 40 gigabyte version of the PS3. So I think that was like 2008, they removed backwards compatibility. It was only 40 gigabytes. I believe that was in 20% loss. And the original PS3 was at 25% loss. Now, I don't think Sony's ever going to go back to 25% losses. They see that. I really think the 360 PS3 gen was this war of attrition Microsoft and Sony never want to do again. They both lost billions in the first half of that gen. Billions. Like, it was terrible. Like, and so I think that, though, we should expect a 10% loss. And if you go with that, you remove the disc players, 420, 10% loss is like 380 or something. I think if they want to, they can easily sell the discless version for under 400. And I think the most, I think I could see them doing 450 and 500, but that would be if they're cocky, right? They would have to be like saving some big guns. We have no clue they've had the whole time. I think if they want to win, if they couldn't afford to do 350 and 450, but I think what they should consider doing, even if they don't want to go down to 350, I think they should consider like 359 or 379, something like that, where it's like we're selling this for a full game's less of money, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I think, I think even like 359 would be worth it because, like, look, if you're going to go into a store and see the Xbox Series S for $300 with half a gigabyte, we already know the digital version still has 800 gigabytes. Sony puts that at 350 to. Are you really not going to pay $50 for that better SSD, extra storage, and all and the extra performance that would be in the discless PS5? I just think I could not agree more. I'm not sure they'll go to 350. I kind of think they're going to go to 399, to be honest, because I don't think they feel the need to be aggressive anymore. But if they want to win, they can afford to go to 350. They can afford to.
It's funny. It's funny that you bring that up. You said that if they don't have the aggressiveness, they're gonna go to 399. It kind of reminds me of the Microsoft versus Sony situation that we have right now is reminding me of the AMD versus Nvidia and AMD versus Intel that we've been seeing. So this could play out because if you look at AMD versus Intel, the reason AMD was able to get back on their feet with the launch of the original, Ryzen generation is because Intel was pretty much complacent and things have got backlogged and they weren't able to get up on their feet as fast as they wanted to with 10 nanometers being delayed and all that stuff. So AMD was able to use,
I would say Zen was better, but it wasn't better at gaming yet. It was just priced really low.
Yeah, it was just priced really low. So, and Intel, with how the whole monolithic thing was going on 10 nanometers, they couldn't really respond to it as quickly as they had hoped. And you could also argue that they were just a bit complacent. They weren't thinking about it. So when it came, they just had to scramble. And that's why AMD was able to get back so quickly when it comes to processors. But when you look at AMD versus Nvidia and and Jensen, just I feel like whenever I look at one of Jensen's conferences, he's just like, okay, we're not ever going to sleep on AMD. Like, there is no chance I'm ever going to. That is the difference between
Nvidia and Intel. Nvidia actually it continues to innovate, even if they get some complacent or cocky. They continue to go for it.
Exactly. Yeah. They just keep saying, there's no way we're ever going to let AMD win. Even if we don't think they're going to have this, okay, we're still going to try to always beat them, get insider info, spy on them, whatever it may be. Whatever we got to do, we got to release something better.
If AMD went from having 20 to 30% market share to 40 to 50%, that would be a catastrophic loss of revenue for Nvidia. They cannot afford to lose that, right? Whereas Intel, well, we don't need to get into that, but go on.
So yeah, exactly. So I think this could play out in either one of those two ways, either an AMD versus Intel or an AMD versus Nvidia, because we've seen it happen in the past with these two companies. So the whole Microsoft versus Sony thing, it depends if Sony gets complacent like Intel did, but we're going to head down the same road. It's going to be bad. But if they honestly want to keep hammering down, like Nvidia, keep pushing it and we're going to price this aggressively and win where they can, wherever they can, then they're going to take it. It really just depends on, what they want to do. But we've seen both routes. So depending on what they do, things could happen, things couldn't, all that stuff.
Yeah, but we both agree there's no way it's more than 500. And if Sony wants to go to 350, they absolutely can.
Oh, yeah, for sure. 100%.
Okay, so let's start getting to the final subjects here. We have been talking for quite a while. I mean, as you know, I was told that there could be a Sony. I guess I haven't told other people this, but I'll just say it now. I was told there could be a Sony conference where they reveal the PS5 on Wednesday. And then then they publicly said there wouldn't be. But then now the Xbox reveal has happened. So me and you weren't sure if we wanted to record on, ahead of time or have another late episode. But I think I came to the conclusion, you know what? One of these broken silicons will be the first episode where I talk about the PS5's final reveal. I'm done guessing when they're revealing this because it's just going to be any week now.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we just decided to go forward. So at least we have the Xbox stuff to discuss. But I guess let's just firm this up then. when do you think PlayStation's going to reveal it? Because they could show it off right after this podcast goes live, which would be funny. But like, when do you think they will? And what do you think? What price do you think they're going to go to?
Honestly, this is going to sound bad, but I think PlayStation regular $449 and then PlayStation discless like a $429. I know that sounds weird, but that's what I'm thinking. Honestly,
you think they'll make it that close?
I think they might, because at the end of the day, it's a Blu-ray player. I mean, how much do Blu-ray players even cost? I have no idea.
No, right. But I think that they'll be aggressive because, you have to remember, if you have a Blu-ray player, and this is the example I give. This is now months old example. But what was it? It was I hadn't played Call of Duty. I don't know which one it was. They're all blending together. It was Call of Duty Infinite Warfare or something, the space one where you could choose the planets you go to. That is always $20 or more on Steam, maybe sometimes 10. And it was $7 free shipping on Amazon, the Blu-ray version. And so when you have a disc player in your console, there's so many chances where Sony won't make money on a sale, whether it's that or used games. Yeah, removing the disc player locks them in to giving you all those. I'm rubbing my hands together, So I think it's in Sony's best interest to sell the disc version at cost or even with a slight profit. So they make sure they make that money and then take the disc version and just do that 10, 20% markdown to be aggressive and take market share now. Because most people do buy digital now, even on console.
Yep.
And they will make more profits if they have to always buy your device. Actually, I do want to bring that up. The one thing that surprised me about the Series S is that it was half a terabyte. I thought it was going to be 1 terabyte that they still gave to the digital version. The fact that it's half a terabyte and you're going to have to buy a proprietary Microsoft SSD, there's a lot of people that won't factor that in, but I'm just making sure no one forgets that if you rush out and get that cheaper version. It's cheaper for a reason. They're going to lock you into buying their, SSDs. Their Vita memory cards.
So now that you bring that up, I think I will go down to $399, but I think most likely it's going to be $449, $399. That's my guess. I wouldn't be surprised though if it was lower. Yeah.
Would you be surprised if Sony went to $499?
To completely just match that Series X? I would be surprised. I'd be very surprised.
I want to be clear. I know there's the whole teraflops thing, but I'm telling you guys, the performance, it's not worse. It's not. I don't want to get into it. I've dissected that in a different episode with someone who went into the hardware, but well, okay. I mean, I guess if to be fair, I should say what I think, right? I mean, it's hard for me to say. For whatever reason, I'm getting the feeling, here's how I'm going to frame my answer. Sony wants to do $399 and $499. That's what they wanted to do the whole time, I think. At those levels, they're making big old money. But I think that right now, there's probably a boardroom meeting, maybe literally right now, where they're deciding if they should go to $349 and $449. And I guess that's my answer, is that I still suspect they want to charge more, but don't be surprised if the discless version is below $400, because they know if you walk into a Best Buy and see 800 gigabytes versus 512 and just a game's worth more money for it, people will just buy that, right? Bigger number.
Exactly.
So there's some final reader mails here. I figure let's blaze through a few of them. All right, let me see here. So, all right. I'm going to skip this one. Let's see. All right, Jeremy Lamb writes in and says, since Microsoft is releasing all first-party games for both consoles and PC, and direct storage isn't coming until 2021, which is something people forget. Nvidia talked about RTX-IO for the Ampere, and I think it utilizes Microsoft's direct storage anyways, API. So it's that's not really going to be ready till 2021 anyways. He says, are we not going to see Xbox using any advanced SSDs for their GPU until 2021, or the Xbox Tech do without it to remain compatible with PC and Xbox One releases?
Well, in my opinion, I think, we wouldn't see anything too crazy till 2021 once that comes, because especially since, you're tying that, you're tying not only to console, not only to PC, but to to last gen Xbox 2, and Phil Spencer said 2 years of Xbox One being able to play whatever game comes out on the Series X, then yeah, I'd have to say yeah, we wouldn't see anything too crazy until later down the line for the Series X and Series S.
Yeah, I mean, but I think you said this in a video. I think they're starting to regret that weird thing they said of like all games on Xbox One and Series X for the first 2 years, and like they're already starting to pull some games from being on the Xbox One.
They are starting to pull some. Yeah. So honestly, let's be serious. If you thought about it, you would have seen it coming, because that's a really tough thing to do. Like people want to argue that the Xbox One won't hold the Series X back or won't hold the Series S back. It will. At the end of the day, there's nothing you can do about it.
I mean, especially the fact that it has a hard drive, right? Like that changes how you entirely program a game.
Exactly. So yeah, I think they are starting to regret it, and there are already a couple of games that aren't going to be on Xbox One. So
yeah, I mean, that's something I said since January, right? When I saw that repeatedly on my channel, I was just like, either the Xbox Series X is so powerful, it's a great next-gen console, or it's not. You can't say this game also runs on Xbox One and the Series X is the most powerful next-gen console, because if it is, the game shouldn't run on the Xbox One. Like, it can't be both. I think you've literally said that too.
Yeah, I did say that. Mm-hmm.
Griff Della Griff writes in and says, any news on the expensive PS5 cooling or when there will be a teardown? I don't know. Have you heard about like the cooling cost rumors, or like when do you think there will be a PS5 teardown?
So I don't think the teardown is going to come before the price reveal, obviously. At least in my head, that's how it would work. But I did hear a couple of like, I never really believed like the patent things, that comes out. Like, they're kind of like,
they patent all types of things that never happen.
Yeah, so they might never use it. They might never do this. But I did see one that was pretty interesting about, the PS5 instead of using like regular thermal paste, they're going to be using liquid metal. I saw that. So, I mean,
there's also been patents where they like have a cooling on both sides of the PCB, kind of actually almost similar to like, I think some things Ampere does. And that they may even have 3D printed copper pipes that go through the die to cool all the way through it. If that happens, that is more expensive. Although again, guys, these devices, since they're mass produced, $10 more than it would be otherwise, $20. Like it's not like a $100 cooler, despite them charging an arm and a leg to put a slightly bigger cooler on your graphics card.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I haven't seen too much about it, but.
Well, it's funny. I think Digital Foundry said that they were going to have some PS5 teardown months ago, and it's never happened. I'm going to be honest, guys. One thing I've been one of the few people to be outspoken about is I really do. My understanding truly is the PS5 has some customizations to its GPU architecture that aren't going to be on desktop till RDNA 3, it turns out. And with that in mind, do you really think AMD wants people looking at it until the last minute?
Yeah.
like see that, and I've even heard that there could, I don't want to say, right, because I'm going to be called a fanboy, but like I've heard some pretty wild things about what they did to get low enough latency to stream in assets with that SSD. So I think there's some secret sauce there they don't want to show. Like, think about, we've had Xbox die shots for the whole year, and Sony doesn't seem to want to show anything about how the internals work. And what I've heard is that it's pretty complex stuff going on in there. Like, I don't think a teardown's that easy. It's not just a box.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's see here. And Keith writes in, the Wi-Fi 6 support in PS5 might be quite useful for VR. Thoughts? Well, my thoughts, and Keith, would be yes. Like, my understanding is the PSVR 2 might be wireless and use Wi-Fi 6 for low latency transmission to your headset. So, actually, have you heard about that at all?
I actually haven't. I have not been keeping up with the PSVR news, but that is pretty interesting that you mentioned this. Yeah.
And I think that's the key to VR becoming mainstream too, is not having a bunch of freaking wires hanging off my back.
Yeah. Just wireless everything. And actually higher resolutions, like honestly, like just being more fluid. Because I don't know if it's gotten better since the last time I used the VR headset, but that was a big problem. Just like it was just,
no, I was shaking my head. Yeah. I mean, it's cheap now, right? So like if you have it because it's cheap to try out some games. But I mean, I've also heard they want to do 1440p per eye, which if they're aiming for 4K 60, which is over double the resolution of 1440p, I think they could just pull that off too. So I think that's that. But besides that, and Keith, I would recommend you listen to the Network Engineer episode from last year because we talked about that for like an hour. Let's see. Michael Unterhuber writes, Xbox just revealed their Xbox Series S on Twitter at $299. What do you guys think this will mean for PS5 and Xbox pricing? Oh, I think we answered that.
Yeah,
we beat that horse to death. How long will it take for Sony to respond? I guess that's a good question. Like, how long do you think until Sony responds?
I don't think they care, honestly. I feel like the entire thing with Xbox revealing everything first and Sony just taking their sweet time, like, you know how we talked about complacency versus not complacency? I don't even think this is complacency. I think they're fully justified in their right to not be rushed here because of, you know, how well they did previously and how the, you know, the general stigma of the PS5 now. Because like 6 months ago, this stigma was not here. People thought it was going to be trash, but now things are starting to turn around. So I feel like now they have a bit more leverage. They could honestly wait a bit longer if they wanted to, and nobody, I don't think, would bat an eye. So it's still up in the air. Honestly, we could have seen it today. We could see it next week. Doesn't really matter to them. I just think they're still, they're going to reveal it
before October, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think they're going to do it probably September, but they're going to reveal it when they're like, you know, when they're finally had that boardroom meeting you were talking about. Once they do that, they're going to do it.
Yeah, I don't. So I know there's rumors they may rush out something. I am just like refreshing rumors to see if this pops up while we're talking. But a theory I've had, because I know that some people have told me they've seen like God of War 2 behind closed doors. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if they had a mini reveal ready and then they just had to type in the price and press render for a month now. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if they basically were ready. But I think, and again, all of what I'm saying right now is theory, is not confirming anything. I think at a certain point, once it hit September, they were like, really? Xbox still hasn't said their price, right? And I think they said, here's what's going to happen. We're going to reveal near the end of September, and we're just going to make sure the show is extra, extra, extra ready. And Microsoft will have to have said something before then, which it turns out they're right. But I think if Xbox shows off a couple of surprise exclusives, the bombshells I were told about was supposed to be the Xbox Series S, except there was supposed to be some big show in August and they canceled it after the Halo reveal. Because they wanted to. I think Xbox knows they need to take extra time to make sure the final showcase they do is actually good. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think Sony's going to show it. They could show something anytime now. And I think they're just planning for end of September because they don't care anymore. And it's not, right, like you said, complacency. I think they just know that they've been nailing their messaging for the past 2 months and they didn't the first few months. And so they know that they should just, it's more important to make sure you nail the messaging than it is to get something out first. At least that's what I think.
Exactly.
Okay, so let me see here. Also, so Jim D's asking, are they going to release the Series S? See, because I heard it might release after, at the soonest. It turns out the Series S is launching same day as Xbox Series X. So Jim D's question's already been answered by Microsoft's Twitter account. Let me see. Yeah. So I guess there's two more. All right. Type 2501 says, if Game Pass is the future, is it a future we want to be living in?
I say yes. Honestly, I think I'm all for it. Like a future where, like, you know, games for a service and you pay monthly to have like kind of like Netflix. I think it's a really cool idea, but execution is a big thing. Like, execution is key. But I'd say, yeah, I'd be done. I'm not saying it'll be, I don't know how it would work. This is just me going off intuition, but I'd definitely be done. I could do it.
Right. I think people worry about change, and it's like game streaming, for instance. When Stadia was announced, there were a lot of hardcore PC gamers freaking out because they're like, oh, this is going to kill good games, and now I'm going to have to deal with, you know, laggy 1080p because this is, you know, and well, I guess Stadia kind of doesn't work at all, so that's not happening clearly. And that's a whole other discussion. But like, I think what an argument I make is if it is the future, it's because we decided we wanted to live in it, right? Like, it's not going to become the future unless we vote with our wallets. So if Game Pass becomes the future, we decided the answer is yes. And so, true. And if we don't, it didn't. And sure, there could be different things that makes it pan out or not. But I mean, the one concern I have about Game Pass is a race to the bottom. Because it's like you said, Microsoft can afford to make all these games. Microsoft can afford to, like, they gave away Gears of War 5 for free, guys. Like, let's be honest. That's what happened there. And I've crunched some numbers, and it's like if Game Pass really needs to take off to pay for AAA games, like AAA games cost like 50 to 100 million bucks to make. They might go up. A lot of people think it'll cost more next gen. So I don't know how many subscribers. Like, let's say they have 2 million. Like, let's just say. So 2 million, right? I'm going to do the math now. Forgive me, people. So like, I just want to make sure I'm not completely full of shit. So let's say 2 million people are on this service and they're paying $15 a month. Let's multiply it by 24 because that's kind of a game cycle. Now I'm going to divide that by $100 million to make a game. I get 7.2, right? And that's if game costs are the same, and that's a 2-year dev cycle. You see what I'm kind of saying, though? How many great games can they actually afford to make? And would they be forced to just get into this checkbox game because it's less about making... I mean, GTA 5 cost $500 million, and people will go, that was marketing. No, it wasn't. It cost them $500 million to make, and then there were marketing costs. So... Do you see my point, though? Do you worry there could be a race to the bottom where Microsoft can afford to eat these losses, and then at the end, they're not making as good games because they can't afford to without having just millions and millions of subscribers? Is that a concern you have at all?
Not really. I feel like, as the future progresses, and let's say that, for some reason, Games Pass or something like Games Pass becomes, the future, I feel like, the number of 2 million is actually going to, probably be a bit higher than 2 million or whatever. So I feel like it will be hard. 7.2 is low. It is a bit low, but I feel, and they want to make their money.
Because that's over 2 years, right? I said times 24. So that'd be like 3.5 games a year. And that's a game, and that would be a game that costs to what they cost to make now. We're not even accounting for next gen. So like maybe they can afford then basically what I'm saying to make like 2 good games a year. And will they really do that? Is 2 good games a year? Because they want to put more than 2 games on that roster,
But they only really need 2 to make it work, I think. 2 a year is more than enough, because how much do they have now?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I guess what I'm saying is I don't think it's bad necessarily. I just think there is an argument you could make for why it could be like what happened. The example I've heard is the Android and iPhone market. These people try to make these $30, $40 AAA experiences for smartphones, and then everyone decided we're not going to pay more than $4 for a game, and now there are no good games on smartphones, pretty much, right? And so that's what I worry about, though, right? I worry, but then again, at the same time, Sony will still be there probably making $60 games and go, we're still going to make this one-off that's not part of it every now and then. And so I don't know. I think there's room for them both to exist, to be honest. All right. Let me see here. Nard Dog says, this time around, the consoles come into a market where many owners of the previous gen have stacked up their game library through subscriptions. The ever-extending library is an asset people are probably wanting to hold on to. I assume the console of choice, therefore, for most people are just what they had the previous generation. Fanboys aside, how badly would one console have to screw up to make people actually switch to the other platform at this point?
Well, honestly, I don't think you even need to screw up that hard, because I'm sure people care about their game libraries, but I think a lot of people kind of look at it a bit differently than they should. Like, sure, I have, whatever game sitting on my PlayStation 4, my Xbox One, but how often do I really play them now that I'm done with them? Like, it's not like God of War was a great game. I might go back and play it again one day, but I'm never going to want to play it every day, or I'm not going to go back and play whatever Sea of Thieves, go play it if I'm not playing it right now. So I feel like people look at it and they like the option, but you don't really need it. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like a lot of people realize that, and a lot of people just straight up don't care and they'll just leave. But I feel like once you realize that, it's not going to matter. And even if you don't realize that, there are people who don't realize that and agree with Nard Dog's point and will still leave. So I don't think they need to screw up that hard. They just need to screw up just a little bit. Yeah, and people will leave. Yeah.
Well, it's an interesting point, because I think it becomes more entrenched as time goes on. And yeah, I hear plenty of friends who have iPhones that say they want to get an Android one, but they're just admitting they're stuck to that ecosystem. So I think it's more and more of a thing as people are more and more entrenched in the same ecosystem, because you just become used to it. It becomes nice. It's safe. You're used to playing in this swimming pool. But at the same time, a lot of people said people weren't going to switch to PS4 when the Xbox One obviously screwed up, and a lot did. So I think people are much more fickle and less loyal to a brand than people think. I think what you see with like the fanboys is such a small sliver of the actual market that you're overestimating how many of them there are. So I think no matter what, you're going to get, at this point, more than before, maybe 10 million people or 20 million even, that are just going to get the new Xbox unless it's horrible, right? And maybe 20 million that are going to get the PlayStation unless it's horrible. But I think over half of the market will switch just like whatever they think's best, just like a snap of a finger. They're not as loyal as you think they are.
Exactly. I agree.
All right. I got one more question here. So let's see. Cheesy Ramen writes in and he says, do you expect channel growth? I guess he's speaking specifically to me, but I think you can answer it too, to slow after the Ampere RDNA 2 Zen 3 launches. So for you talk more about Xbox and PlayStation, but like, do you expect channel growth to be badly affected a year from now after the console's already out?
Not really. I don't think so. Because I feel like, at least me with my timetable, it's not really... I do get, I guess, like whenever I cover, news related things or explaining something, I do get like a bit more views, but it's not, I don't think I would stop growing at the rate that I am because of because it's not like, because I feel like the channels that will stop growing at the rate that they are news channels specifically. Like if you just cover news and you don't really, give too many opinions, or you don't really go into in depth, or like,
if
sources.
all you do is regurgitate news, right? Like, and there are YouTube channels for PC gaming where it seems like all they do is try to get a leak out first without doing any analysis or having anything to really say.
Yeah, those guys are screwed. I think, they're gonna they're especially gonna have some slow channel growth. But like Moore's Law are dead, or my channel is dead, or my channel, I don't think
is not
too
dead.
Much. Yeah, Moore's Law is not dead. Sorry, I don't think too much is gonna happen. Probably, I will admit, it probably will slow down noticeably, but not anything crazy. So I'm not particularly worried about it.
I mean, the way I would answer it is I'm already putting together early, like RDNA 2 is not even out, guys. And I'm already putting early RDNA 3 information together from sources. And Zen 3 isn't even out. And I've already done leaks on what I know about Zen 4, which, higher core counts, 3D stacking. What else do you like? ABX 512, all of these other things, right? And what's coming out after that? Zen 5, and then RDNA 4. And, and then after Ampere comes Hopper. And I actually don't even think of myself as a leak channel. I just happen to have good sources now. So I want to tell you guys the PlayStation 5 early last year, I wanted to say it has this crazy SSD when I learned, because I think it's interesting. But it's like, I don't, when I hear, and I do hear sometimes other tech tubers and leakers say, there's not a lot of news this week. Every week, I'm like, what? There is and it's because I don't just cover graphics cards. I cover consoles, servers, Intel, AMD, Nvidia. I've done videos that involve Google Stadia and ARM. I don't think there's any shortage of stuff to talk about anytime soon, frankly. And even a console-focused channel, I could see you, this is going to be a competitive generation. So I think it's like you say, if all you do is leak, there will be boom and bust cycles. But if you have something to say, I have to axe videos I want to do because one thing is more important to talk about.
Yeah, exactly. That sucks.
Yeah, I mean, and people know, if you look, you can see this, dry erase board. I've had, Intel Lunar Lake on there, an AMD APU video I've wanted to do for a while. I don't know what I'm talking about, Lunar Lake. I think Ampere is more interesting. So, that news will just have to wait.
You know what's insane? I actually have a whiteboard right next to me, too. And on top of it says video ideas. The exact same thing.
Yeah.
The exact same thing, yeah.
But so, and by the way, Moore's Law is dead, but I was saying your channel is not dead. Why don't you plug your channel one more time here?
Oh, okay. So my channel, guys, is Innocence with 2 I's at the end. So it's INNOCNCEII, pronounced Innocence the second, but I just refer to myself as Innocence, and that's what my fans call me too, just Innocence. So that's my channel, Innocenceii. INNOCNCEII. You could find me on YouTube. I do a bunch of breakdowns or just reviews of games. So Moore's Law is Dead does mainly tech stuff. So I do tech most of the time. And then I also do game reviews or just give my opinions on games and stuff like that. So it's just not just tech, but a bunch
There's
of
always
things.
new games coming out too. Like,
yeah, for sure. Yeah. So that's my channel. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and there will be a link in the description. Like the top link will be your channel, and so yeah, we'll include all of that. And otherwise, I mean, I don't know. Any final words? Anything else you want to say or discuss?
No, not really. I was very surprised when you reached out to me to do a podcast though, because I was watching your channel before you reached out to me. I was watching it for a little bit. Then I saw that email and I was like, fuck yeah, I'll do it. I was like, let's do it.
To be honest, cool. Man, I don't even remember how I knew about your channel or why. I mean, I don't mean it like as a slam. Like I literally don't remember. Like it always comes from either one of my fans suggesting your channel, or sometimes I'm always looking for new people to talk to because I find, having guests on makes me less full of shit, because like you need someone besides the same people telling you, like clapping for you over and over. If you don't bring in outside opinions, you'll get stagnant. And I don't know, it was either that or sometimes when I get a new patron, I'll look at the other people they support and I'm like, oh, who's this guy? Oh, there's way more anime channels on Patreon that I had any idea there were. But so I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I've watched a few of your videos. I think they're pretty good, and that I don't know. I don't even remember. I've probably found you a month ago because of some of my fans like you. So that's what I'll say. Mm-hmm. Thanks for listening, everybody. Remember to subscribe to Broken Silicon on your preferred podcast app. And of course, this is Moore's Law is Dead. You probably know if you've been listening to us ramble for 2 hours. I don't know. Thanks for listening. The following podcast was brought to you by the YouTube channel and website Moore's Law is Dead. Moore's Law is Dead and Broken Silicon are trademarks of their creator, Tom. That guy is me, and I am indeed the creator, editor, writer, and showrunner of Moore's Law is Dead podcasts, videos, articles, and other media. However, Moore's Law is Dead is a team, with Broken Silicon co-hosted by my brother, Dan, audio editing by Gerard Cortez, and select technical editing by Carbon Cry. You can find all of our information, including how to get a hold of us, at www.mooreslawsdead.com. And if you are a fan and would like to send mail or other hardware, please mail parcels to Moore's Law is Dead, P.O. Box 10468, Peoria, Illinois, 61612. And speaking of fans, without exaggeration, the patrons are solely responsible for the continued distribution of the content you just listened to. And so if you have some extra money, but only if you do, please consider supporting us. For just $2 a month, you get access to the exclusive podcast Die Shrink, voting on subjects of future podcast episodes, the ability to have your questions read aloud on Broken Silicon, Die Shrink, and Loose Ends, and of course, the Moore's Law is Dead Discord full of like-minded people who would love to meet you. I am one of them. The Discord is only at $1, and at higher tiers, you get access to ad-free episodes of Broken Silicon, the back catalog of Flyover States podcast, thanks in the credits of videos and podcasts, and other perks as well. And if you cannot afford to support us, please just share Moore's Law is Dead videos and podcasts with friends and family on social media and Reddit. And give Broken Silicon and Flyover States a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. All of this really does help so much more than I think anyone realizes. If you'd like to advertise on the podcast or a person of interest who would like to be a guest, please reach out to the email address mlhbdead@gmail.com. But as I said, this podcast would not be possible without its fans supporting it. And so now it is time to give a personal thanks to the greatest of the fans. The following supporters are at the 10 gigahertz or higher producer levels. Matthew McMullen, Tellen, Dean, Benny Berlin, Justin Yunt, Thomas Rupp, I Love You, Lynn and Jim Bollocks, Joshua Albin, Mohammed Al-Kwari, Frederick Lau, James Crasta, Justin Parrish, Zachary Martin, Terrence Herod, Brad Bedlam, Phil S., Courtney Elliott, The Ninth Dude, Greg Renegard, TSPCFS, Chrysantine, Night Rogue 77, The Mechanical Philosopher, Lebo King Kilo, Batboy Diesel, Daniel Hyde, D. Kunke, Christoph Novak, Jack O'Neill, Matt Salem, Aaron Close, Sexy, VI Pass, Sadler, Isaiah Gosner, Lethros, Telos, Hey There's a Kidney, Greg T. Wanchek, Jacob Barber, Exoti, Hector Santana, Matthew Lane, Joe McMorrow, Jen Rauner, Rubber Ducks, Drita Full, Ali Robertson, Eric Jackson, Jonathan, Joe, Evan Dingle, Dominique Koch, Stefan, Original Ross, George Danforth, Sam MacArthur, Total Silo, Sol Connor, Michael Costa, Andrew S., Blake, Aaron Keith, Kelly Baudino, Endless Logins, Tom Senefilippo, Justice Brennan, Ivan K, Trevor Power, Sayonara, Elenia, Joshua Staveness, Daniel Nishpal, Franco Frederic, Hardware Numbers, Alex Carastile, Dark Rain 2049, Leighton Perry, Mac, Carlos Valdez, Carnivore Bear, Macdo226, Zabra Zabur, Zlicky, Metin Horsageji, David Cowden, Ricky Tan, Garanadin, Patrick JS, Justin Staples, Freddie Quinoas Jr., Christopher Foster, Kiwi Phil, Joaquim Hagan, Sarah Light, Anthony Garefa, Matthew Griffin, Alex, Joseph Loria, Colin Marco, Deke, Dare Taumak, Raul Abeneni, Cheesy Ramen, Jake Dude 23, Brian Riggleman, Maxim Bratukin, Ryan Deniscu, Dave McCoy, Falco Milek, Messrs, Paul Bogdan, Morton Svensden, and Andrew. And thank you to Sahara for the music.